Hey guys, welcome to the channel. As you see in the thumbnail, what if Naruto was god of destruction and got massive harem part 1. Before I start, please do support for more awesome content and subscribe my channel and like this video. Go support and follow the Rinoti for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story, link in the description. Let's start this video. As 4th Hokage finished hand seal sequence, he was unaware that not far from the barrier that was holding the Kyuubi stood his enemy, who was observing everything that was going on, with his Sharingan spinning wildly, taking in every detail. But when said enemy saw what was about to happen, something in his mind suddenly clicked and his one visible eye widened, as if in recognition. So that is what prophecy was about. I must have this child, but first, I should double check it, thought a masked stranger and disappeared with a swirl. And just as the barrier that was holding the Kyuubi fell, Heir and Sarutobi rushed to the spot where 2 dead bodies and an infant were lying. Former Hokage could clearly hear the cries of the newborn, and it broke his heart to watch the scene before him. Just several hours into the new world and already had to witness his 2 most precious people die. But before he could even get near the blonde baby, a masked man appeared out of nowhere, took a blue-eyed infant and disappeared just as fast as he came, not even leaving a trace that he was there. It took about a minute for the 3rd Hokage to recover from shock, and when he did recover, he fell on his knees, helplessly wondering if he would ever get the chance to see the blonde boy again. Equals many miles away from Konoha equals. Same masked man appeared with a baby in his arms, in a dark room, with the only source of light being a few candles. Said baby was still crying his little eyes out, but not moving much. Before the masked individual could do anything at all, something popped out from the floor. Masked man merely tilted his head to the side to see what it was. He was greeted with a very interesting sigh, or maybe it would be interesting for somebody who hasn't seen it before, but for this man, this was just a daily routine. From the floor emerged a man, or some kind of mixture of a man and a plant. His upper body and head was enveloped by 2 large Venus flytrap-like extensions, and it was in fact open, showing the man he has short green hair, yellow eyes, and his body has 2 different colored halves. His left side was completely white, while his right side was black with small white dots along his body. "Toby, why did you bring this child here?" asked the whole half. Masked man, now identified as Toby, just turned his head back to the newborn and after a long pause answered. "Zetsu, do you remember that prophecy, which I found not so long ago?" There was a slight, but finally, black half of the man-plant creature known as Zetsu answered. "I remember it perfectly well, word to word. I believe that the one who the prophecy was talking about is currently in my arms. And I was just about to check it." Now this got Zetsu's attention. He moved closer to Toby to have a good look at a blonde-haired child. Masked Sharingan user then put his arm on infant's head and looked straight in his eyes. For several seconds nothing happened, the only difference was that the blue-eyed child stopped crying and was now curiously watching spinning Sharingan eye. But after another minute, he squirmed in the man's arms, as if in pain, and started crying even louder, closing his eyes in the process, letting tears flow freely down his round face. And when he opened his eyes again, Toby and Zetsu gasped at the same time. Where before there were 2 blue orbs, now there are black orbs with a red 6-edged star in the middle of them, spinning as fast as Toby's Sharingan. And moments later, his eyes changed to full matured Sharingan, and then back to his original blue orbs. Mere seconds after that, the child was fast asleep, leaving 2 men with nothing but silence. How is it possible that this child has Mangekyou Sharingan? What did you do to him?" asked a shocked white half of Zetsu, while his black half just stared at the child with awe, shock and fear. "I did not do anything to this child, though I suspect that it was my actions that caused him to gain. As to how he has Sharingan in the first place, it is quite simple." "How so?" "You see, Yondaime Hokage had Senju and Uchiha blood flowing in his veins that he wasn't even aware of. But if he was part Uchiha, surely he would awaken Sharingan sooner or later. Actually he couldn't. As you know, I always make a background check on my enemies, and while digging information about Namikaze Minato, I discovered a few interesting facts." "Oh? Yes, you see, there was once a woman in Uchiha clan who had an affair with a man from Senju clan. But that man died on a mission, leaving Uchiha woman pregnant. That woman, for whatever reason, decided to keep the child, but after some time became scared that her clansmen would find about her having a child from Senju. She then somehow got hold of very old seal that was known only by Uchiha clan head or elders. That particular seal was designed to seal off individual Sharingan forever. It was mainly used on traders. So after giving birth to a child, she immediately sealed off his Sharingan and left him in an orphanage with different name. And that child grew up to be the Yondaime Hokage of Konohagakure no Sado. But there was one more little detail that only few Uchiha had known of. That woman was descendant of Madara Uchiha. I see, but that still does not explain why he has. My guess is that it was caused by the sealing and from seeing both of his parents die. After all, the feeling of loss and hopelessness is known by all, even as young as him. What will you do with him? I will keep him and raise him as the true Uchiha. After all, if what prophecy said is true, then this child has potential to serve Procurement Sennin," said Toby, his one visible eye shining with excitement and anticipation. "How will you name him?" He already has a name. It was given to him by his biological parents. His name is Naruto Uchiha Naruto. Never thought of you as an honorable person. I am not, I'm just too lazy to think of the new one," said Masked Man with a slight chuckle. "I certainly look forward to seeing how this will turn out," said the black half, while the white half let out a humorous laugh. Equals 6 years later, unknown location equals. Blonde child, roughly 6 years old, was training in a clearing that had many craters and chunks of earth were laying around that were made by the said child, from the looks of it. "Naruto-kun," called Zetsu as he appeared from the ground behind the 6-year-old. Naruto, hearing his name being called, turned around and gave a small wave as a greeting. "What is Zetsu?" "Your father wants to see you, so hurry up and finish your training," said Black Zetsu, disappearing back into the ground. "Dad wants to see me? I wonder why could he actually remember? Sigh, only one way to find out I guess." Though blue-eyed boy while cleaning himself from all the dirt that was on him. He then quickly walked toward the building and toward the room where his father was waiting for him. As he walked, he could see Toby sitting behind the desk, waiting for him, with a little box in his hands. "Dad, Zetsu told me that you wanted to see me." "Indeed, Naruto-kun. Do you know what day it is today?" asked a masked man, his eyes shining with some sort of excitement. "October 10th, why?" asked Blonde Uchiha, watching his father with a curious expression. "Is it what I think it is?" "Yes, and today is also your birthday. And I got your present right here," he said, patting the box that he was holding. As soon as those words left Naruto's eyes widened, looking at Toby in shock. "What? Did you really think that I would forget about my only son's birthday?" asked the elder Sharingan wielder, showing his amusement. It's just I never thought that you'd be one for birthdays and such," Naruto managed to stutter out. "Believe it or not, I really do care about you a great deal. And I actually gave you something special every time on your birthday before. I'm sorry if it looked like I didn't. And no, don't say that. It should be me who must apologize for not noticing it sooner. You probably think that I'm ungrateful, selfish and spoiled and…" "Stop it. You are none of those things. You are merely too young and therefore you could easily have missed it considering your training regime and all. I am immensely proud of you and as you know, it is very hard to earn my respect." Hearing his beloved father say those things to him made him shine with happiness and he felt like nothing could stop him. "Thank you so much, Dad. I promise you, I won't ever disappoint you, I will be the greatest shinobi in the world," declared Naruto as his eyes shone with determination like Toby had never seen before. Toby smiled proudly behind his mask. "Never thought that I would get so attached to him in such little time. And to think that he would go to such a length just to make me proud of him, it really makes me happy that I'm his father. If somebody told me 10 years ago that I would have a son and I would love him like a real parent should and that he would love me back even more, I would probably laugh at them and then kill them. Oh well, can't say that I'm not happy with how things turned out to be. I believe in you, Naruto-kun. Now let's stop with sentiments, I'm not as young as you and there is just so much sentimental stuff that my poor heart can withstand in such a short amount of time," said the masked man, letting out a small chuckle. Hearing his father say this sent Naruto in fits of uncontrollable giggles. "Now let's wait for Zetsu. I believe he also has a present for you. I will give you mine last." This statement obviously filled the blonde child with excitement. And indeed, several minutes later, Zetsu emerged from the floor carrying 3 large scrolls and a medium-sized one. "Whoa. Is that all for me?" asked Naruto with a look of pure awe. Seeing his look made even Black Zetsu laugh, but after several seconds, he was able to get it under control. "Yes, all 4 scrolls are for you. What are they about?" "Let's see," said White Zetsu as he put all 4 scrolls in front of him. All 4 of them were different and looked pretty fancy, with only medium one being plain white color. "The one with swirl on it has everything that I could recover from Uzumaki clan and believe me, it was not easy finding anything decent in the ruins. Brown one has everything from Senju library that I recovered from Senju mansions across the elemental. This is just amazing. This is…" "Don't mention it, you would get them eventually anyway, but what you can thank me for are the last 2 scrolls, those are special gifts from me." Naruto just looked at him questionably, waiting for him to continue. "You see, while I was in Konoha, I decided to grab the scroll with all that was ever recorded in Konoha in it. And the smaller one has 2 signature techniques of your biological father." Hearing Zetsu mention one of his biological parents made him stiffen. He knew that he wasn't blood related to Toby, if only slightly. He was told all about his real parents about a year ago when he asked his dad about it. Equals flashback equals. Dad, I wanted to ask you something, said the blonde child as he looked up from his book toward his father who was sitting behind his desk, as usual. What is it? Asked Toby, looking up from whatever he was doing. I read in many books and saw other kids with their parents, but I only have a father. And I was wondering what happened to my mother. Did she die? Did she leave me us? Or was it something else? Please, Dad, tell me. Masked individual silently stared at his adoptive son for several minutes and then let out a heavy sigh. I was hoping that we wouldn't have this discussion for several more years, not because I wanted to keep it from you, I was just afraid that you would not understand it fully. But you turned out to be exceptionally smart and I believe that you are ready to hear it all about it. He then motioned Naruto to come closer and to get comfortable. You see, son, I am not your biological father, I adopted you after your biological parents died. Shock was evident on the little blonde's face as he looked at his father. But Toby paid him no mind and instead continued. Now let me tell you a story of how you came to be my son. And tell him, he did. He told him everything that had transpired that night without leaving any little detail. And when he was done, he asked one simple question which caused Naruto's mind to work in overdrive. So what do you think about it, son? Indeed, what do I think about it? Blue-eyed Uchiha was silent for about 10 minutes, thinking over everything that he was told about. Finally he decided to voice his thoughts. I am confused. Was his only answer, though completely truthful. What are you confused about? About the actions of the Yondaime Hokage. Oh? Yes, why did he not teleport his wife to the hospital instead? From what you told me, she would have survived the extraction of the Kyuubi with some medical attention. And there even may have been the chance of her surviving without any medicine at all. Also, if his main focus was on saving the village, then he had much more available options to use instead of that ceiling, which killed him in the process. Can you explain that to me, father? Toby smirked widely behind his mask. See, that's why I said that you were ready to hear all about it. Most children of your age would accuse me of killing their real parents, or even outright hate me. Of course those children would be too naive to understand everything, but not you, no, you are very smart and you see everything for what it really is. Hearing his father praise him made Naruto immensely proud of himself, but he maintained neutral expression, or at least he tried to. Now let me help you out with figuring it all out. You see, as you said, Hokage's main priority was saving the village and doing everything in its best interests. And as I said, Jinchuriki are weapons for the villages who have them, and Yondaime knew that without Jinchuriki, Konoha would be seen as weak and would be attacked by other villages. So he decided to create a weapon. There is one simple answer to all your questions, Namikaze Minato. Yondaime Hokage of Konohagakure no Sado was ready to sacrifice the lives of his wife and son for his village, meaning he valued the village over his own family. But what about my mother? Why didn't she stop him? Or did she have the same ideals as the Yondaime? No, but sadly, her love for Yondaime blinded her too much to see what he was doing. I see. He looked down sadly, but suddenly looked up. But wait, why did you take me with you, and what reason did you have to do so? I will tell you in time, when I deem you ready to hear it. But know this, I never regretted it and it was definitely for your best. If I left you in Konoha, they would most likely turn you into their weapon or treat you like trash and then demand that you protect them. For several minutes there was just silence. I will wait patiently for you to tell me. I know that if you say that I am not ready, that means that I am indeed not. And for what it's worth, thank you for being a good father to me, said Naruto with a warm smile, which he only showed to his father. Again, everything was silent for a couple of minutes, but this time it was broken by the masked man. He stood up, made his way over to Naruto, and did something unexpected. He pulled him in a warm embrace. It should be me, thanking you for being such a good son, he whispered quietly. Flashback end equals. Naruto looked up from the scrolls to his father and stared at him for several seconds, as if having some sort of silent conversation. Finally, after about 3 minutes of their silent argument, his father spoke. Take it, Naruto, take it, learn everything and improve them, make them better, show us that you are much greater than the Yondaime. It's the least you could do to show Zetsu how much you appreciate his gift. Naruto turned back to Zetsu. Thank you, Zetsu, for your time and effort, I really appreciate it, said blonde Uchiha, bowing to the man-plant mixer that stood in front of him. You are very welcome, Naruto-kun, your father and I expect great things from you in the future. Naruto merely smirked at this, as if completely sure that he will do just that. Now Naruto-kun, put those scrolls away and come here, it's time for me to give you my gift, said the adoptive father of blue-eyed Uchiha. 6-year-old's eyes lit up immediately after hearing this, barely containing his glee. He quickly made his way over to his father's desk, almost jumping with excitement. Finally his father opened little wooden box that he held in his hands. There, the box, on a silky material, lay a tube filled with some sort of liquid. But what grabbed Naruto's attention was what floated the tube. They were a pair of eyes. But by no definition were they any ordinary eyes, oh no, they were eyes of Uchiha Madara. Naruto gasped in recognition. He couldn't not recognize those eyes. After all of the stories that his father told him, after all the pictures that he showed him, it was practically impossible not to recognize those eyes that held so much power. Dad, why are you giving them to me? Wouldn't it be better if you wielded them instead? Masked Man just chuckled. I am a bit ashamed to admit it, but those eyes rejected me. What do you mean rejected me? Exactly what I said. You see, before his death, Madara applied some sort of seal on his eyes, so only the person worthy of those eyes would be able to use them. I was afraid of damaging those eyes and thus did not dare to do anything to those seals. And when I tried to wield them, they did not acknowledge me as worthy of them. Admitted Toby. What happened? Asked intrigued Naruto. First I heard some hissing in my head and after several minutes, I felt pain like no other. The only thing I heard before ping out were these words. You are not worthy of the legacy of Madara Uchiha. And you believe that I will be able to wield those eyes? I do not believe so, I know so. Knowing that his father had such a faith in him made his fears disappear in an instant. I accept your gift, father. When can we start the implanting operation? Asked, now overly excited Naruto. Whenever you wish. Was his only answer. Then let's do it now. Proclaimed blonde Uchiha. Toby smirked behind his mask at his son's enthusiasm. If you wish so, then so be it. Zetsu, prepare the operation room. Plant-like man just smirked and gave a nod. At once Toby. Equals 45 minutes later operation room equals. Transplantation operation was finished merely 5 minutes ago and Naruto now lay on the operation table, waiting for anything. Already 5 minutes have passed, but nothing happened. He was starting to get impatient, along with Zetsu and Toby, who were by his side. But then he heard soft voice in his head. If you really are worthy of my power, then repeat after me. I the legacy of Uchiha Madara. Naruto opened his and repeated everything word for word, but what surprised him was that instead of his usual voice, he heard himself actually hissing those words. But before he could ponder any more on that strange hissing he made, he heard the soft voice talk to him again. Hello stranger, my name is Uchiha Madara and if hear this, you are descendant of great Salazar Slytherin and my new heir that will carry my legacy. And if haven't guessed yet, this is merely a recording. But enough about this. The real reason I made this recording is because I sealed all of my memories in my eyes. Prepare yourself, you will now view my whole life for 7 days straight. And one last thing before this recording stops, use my eyes and skills well, be it for evil or good. I will be fine, Naruto managed to say before he lost consciousness, not to be awakened for next 7 days. Ugh, son of a bitch. I don't care what it takes, I will revive that bastard, then fry him like a chicken, then revive him again and cut him to pieces. Arg. I hate this freaking headache. Were the first words of one Uchiha Naruto, who was now tearing bandages off his eyes after 7 days of slumber. Naruto-kun. You're awake. What happened to D? Looking to his right, Naruto could see his father, who just entered the room, staring at him with a curious expression. Not that you could really see his face, but the blue-eyed child, after years of observing his father, could easily recognize it. What? Why are you looking at me like that? Said the 6-year-old kid with raised eyebrows. Instead of answering, Toby gave him a mirror, which he pulled out of somewhere and pointed at it. When he looked in the mirror, he could see himself in it and he instantly understood what his father was so curious about. Now, instead of his spiky blonde hair and round face with slightly visible whisker marks, he had silky semi-straight black hair with some spikes at the back and a leaner face with darker whiskers. He then activated his Sharingan and pumped even more chakra into his eyes to see new and improved versions of them. When his eyes changed one more time, he could now see the same 6-pronged star, but now it also had 3 black circles in it, connected to the center by 3 black line dot link in the profile. He looked at his eyes for several more seconds before looking up from the mirror. Ah, so that's what it is about. I almost forgot about it. Care to explain? Yeah, sure. Oh, and Zetsu, please show yourself, would you? Listening to us without actually being seen by us makes you kind of a stalker, you know. Next second, Zetsu popped out from the wall to Naruto's left with a not so amused expression. Right, so let me start with some little background story first. Started, now raven-haired kid. Noticing that both his father and Zetsu were listening with interest, he continued. You see, not many people knew it, but Madara was very good with seals. Not as good as Uzumaki Seal Master, mind you, but he was pretty decent. And as you know, he didn't have an heir, or at the very least a decent one, seeing as he only had a daughter who wasn't much of a warrior. But after his daughter was born, he lost the ability to produce children in an unfortunate accident. And so, he decided that if he couldn't have an heir, he would make one by some other means. After all, he didn't want his years of hard work to go to waste, but he didn't want to leave his legacy to the Uchiha clan, seeing as they betrayed him. When he learned that his time was near, he sealed all his memories in his very eyes, knowing that somebody would try to use them sooner or later. And this is how I know so much about him. I remember his every moment, every thought, every word he said, and every action he took. But wait, wouldn't that essentially make you him? Asked Toby. Oh, but Madara was smart, he foresaw this. And that is exactly why it only took me 7 days. You see, everything was sped up to 2,000 times. It was as if I read a book or watched a movie about his life very fast. It was too fast for his personality to replace mine, though some of it slipped onto me a bit. But the main part is that only important memories were left, like his knowledge on certain things or skills that will help me. Other useless stuff was thrown away by me, even though I could remember it if I really tried. And to be truthful, I kinda did it unconsciously, so I will have to work on my mind so I would be able to do that on my own will. Finished young Uchiha. That's amazing and all, but what about your change of appearance? Asked the masked Sharingan wielder. Oops, I guess I got a little excited and got carried away. Answered Naruto, looking somewhat sheepish. Really? I couldn't tell by your expression, like I usually do. Ah well, I guess it is a trait that I got from Madara. You know, Uchiha's emotionless expression and all that, which I guess I was also doing unconsciously. Damn, one more thing to work on. So your appearance? Asked Black Zetsu, entering the conversation. Well, it goes like this, and I quote, if you will be heir of the greatest Uchiha, you might as well look like one. So now Madara is basically my second father, sort of. I see, that's very interesting. Said Toby, looking thoughtful. Paid to add, you know that you are my only father, right? You're not mad or something? Asked a slightly nervous Naruto. Masked Uchiha, for his part, just smiled behind his mask and said, no, son, I'm not mad. And I know how you think, don't worry. You know what I think. But how? I'm your father, it's my duty to know these things. So what are you going to do now? Asked White Zetsu, but did not specify who. Well, I'm gonna increase my training regime and work even harder than before and learn everything I can. Answered ex-blonde. And I'm just going to continue doing what I was doing before Naruto woke up. Answered Toby. By the way, why were you cursing when you woke up? Well, Madara could have made the experience less painful, but he was too lazy to add another seal, and also I quote, pain is a good teacher TSK, that lazy dot. Both Toby and Zetsu laughed at this, while Naruto just scowled, while muttering something like it was really painful. Equals 3 years later, Mountain's graveyard. It was once again October 10th, and Naruto was excited, though he didn't show it. Only his father could see clear excitement in his son's eyes as young Uchiha stepped his office, or at least that's what he called it. It was actually almost an empty room, the dungeons, with a desk and several cases, behind which he sat himself. Hello son, and happy birthday to you. This year, I have a very special gift for you, maybe almost as special as the eyes you wield right now. Only indication that Naruto was surprised was a slight widening of his eyes, but the next second his face was once again unreadable. Toby let his hand slide down and into the hidden case in his desk, from which he pulled out a book, a very old book at that. What's that? Asked a confused blue-eyed Uchiha. This is something very important. This is a personal journal of Rikidem Sennin, but I suspect that you already know his real name from Madara's memories, which is Salazar Slytherin. Said Masked Uchiha, handing the old journal to his son, who accepted it with slightly shaking hands. Now Naruto was really excited and he openly showed it by quickly opening said journal, which had Salazar Slytherin engraved on its cover, and reading it, forgetting to thank his father for his generous gift. But his father didn't mind, he just watched with amusement as his son read the journal. Naruto-kun, remember my promise to tell you the truth behind your adoption. This sentence managed to pull Naruto out of his trance, making him jerk his head in his father's direction. It seems that time has come for me to tell you about everything. You are ready to hear it. Naruto just nodded. You see, the reason I took you with me that night is because of the prophecy. 9-year-old Uchiha's expression changed to a curious one. Toby paid him no mind, instead choosing to continue. And before you ask where I learned about a particular prophecy, I read it in that journal you hold. The only thing that I wrote in our language is prophecy. Everything else is written in foreign language that I don't recognize. But how can it be? I can clearly read everything that is written here. Interrupted Naruto. Masked Uchiha sighed in relief. That's good, I was hoping that you would be able to read it. After you told me about Madara's message, where he called you a descendant of Slytherin, I was almost sure that you would be able to read it. Now do you want me to tell you the prophecy, or would you rather read about it yourself? For a minute, Naruto was deep in thoughts. I want to hear it from you, I can read it later. Said blue-eyed Uchiha. Very well, here is the prophecy. Heirs of one who was split in three shall be combined into one. Sacrifice to protect will be raised to destroy. Great savior or great destructor, one of two will become a child become. Heir's fate will be decided by the elder monkey or the swirling schemer. And you think this heir is me? Asked Senior Uchiha. Yes, you fit perfectly. Seeing his son's puzzled expression, he decided to elaborate. Let me explain, Naruto-kun. Heir of one who was split in three shall be combined into one. Prophecy is referring to Rikiden Sennin. Uzumaki, Uchiha and Senju were descendants of Rikiden Sennin, and you have blood of those three clans flowing through you. Born to protect, will be raised to destroy. You protected whole village by becoming Jinchuriki to Kikbi no Inko, but you would be shinobi in any case, and shinobi are killers, we destroy lives. Heir's fate will be decided by elder monkey or swirling schemer you see, Sarutobi Hiruzen, third Hokage, would be the one to decide your fate, would you have stayed in Konoha? And as you guessed, Sarutobi is the monkey, and I'm the schemer. So do you believe me now? Well, I can't argue with that logic. Can I have some time to think about it? Toby gave him an affirmative nod. Next day. Elder Uchiha made his way toward his son's room and knocked. May I enter, Naruto-kun? Of course dad, come in. Was his only response. When he entered the room, he could see an ex-blonde sitting on his bed, meditating, while an old journal was next to him, on the bed. I came to check on you. You usually do not take such a long time to think something over. It is not that, I don't really care about that prophecy. I just got too engrossed with this journal, you wouldn't believe what I found out. And it is no wonder that you could not read it. Salazar charmed it, so only those who can speak to snakes would be able to read it. Charmed? Asked Toby carefully. Yes, charmed. It is amazing. What is? Everything. Explain. When I read this journal yesterday, I couldn't believe my eyes. Salazar wrote about himself, about his whole life. How he was born far away, on an island called England. How he discovered that he was a wizard, yes, a wizard, isn't that amazing? How he and 3 more people created a school for witches and wizards. How he then traveled around the world, learning all kinds of magic and such. How he found himself on an island called Japan, where people hardly heard of magic. How he faced a beast called Kikbi, on the same island. How he couldn't defeat it and sealed him and himself instead. How he sealed off part of that island and named it Elemental Nations. How sealing that beast in himself created something known as chakra and gave him amazing abilities. It's all so unbelievable. I didn't even sleep, I was thinking about it the whole night. By the time Naruto stopped talking, Toby's eyes were wide in shock and amazement. He knew that his son would not joke about this stuff. And that is not all. He created a portal, so only people with eyes, body and blood like his own, would be able to use it. That portal would lead you past a barrier that hides our existence from the rest of the world. They sat in silence for several minutes, both lost in thoughts, until the younger occupant of the room decided to speak up. Father, I have something to ask you. I'm listening. I want to leave, to learn magic. Did you think this over? Naruto just gave a curt nod in return. But I do not wish to leave just yet. You see, that magic school I told you about accepts students starting from the age of 11. And 1 year will be more than enough to adapt to everything new. So you want to leave in 1 year? Yes. Toby sighed and stayed silent for a minute before looking at his son with some sort of gleam in his visible eye. Say Naruto-kun, fancy going to war? Young Uchiha eyed his father carefully. War you say? When, where and against who? You see, I plan to do this a bit later, but seeing as you want to leave in a year, you will need as much experience as you can get. And what better experience than fighting in a war? As to your question soon, in Kiri, against bloodline rebellions. As soon as those words reached Naruto's ears, a sadistic predatory smile formed on his face. You didn't even need to ask. Hahaha, it will be so much fun. Were the words of excited Uchiha as he let out almost maniacal laughter. This action caused his father to remember how he developed his sadistic nature. Flashback. Toby stepped into the clearing where he dropped off his son a couple of hours ago. He knew that little Naruto-kun needed real battle experience. And what better experience than fighting against 2 squads of Kumo Anbu. What he saw amazed him. His son, a child no older than 7, sat on several corpses of shinobi, covered in blood from his head to his little feet, smiling with glee. Naruto-kun? Asked Masked Uchiha slowly. The raven-haired child looked at his father, still smiling. Dad, they were so tough, I had to fight just to survive. If not for my Sharingan and Rinnegan, I would be long dead. but you know dad, it was just so fun. It was the most fun I had in my life. I had to use everything I had to stay alive. Can you do it again, please? Of course, son. We can do it again, whenever you want. Equals flashback end equals. From that day, Naruto's favorite time was bounty hunting. He wouldn't miss a chance to test his skills against stronger opponents. Well, then off you go to training. After all, you have a war to fight in very soon. Naruto hopped off his bed and dashed toward the door but stopped when he heard his father. Oh, and son, I wasn't planning on giving you my special gift for several more years, but considering that you will be leaving very soon and it probably will be a long time till I might reconsider. And of course, only if you prove that you are worthy of it in an upcoming war," said Elder Sharingan wielder, pointing at his eye. Young Uchiha's eyes widened in shock as he understood what his father was implying. Equals flashback several hours after gaining new eyes equals. Dad, there's something I need to tell you. What is it? You see, Madara found a way to take a unique ability that other Sharingan wielder possessed for himself. You could do that if you had Eternal Magicum Sharingan. And in theory, you could take up to 3 different abilities. Madara had 2 ways of doing it. First, you could implant an eye which possessed a particular ability, use that power, and then implant your original eyes back. Second method would take much longer, but it would be less painful. You would need to draw 2 seals, you would need to be in one of them and place the person who has the desirable ability in another and stay in them for 24 hours. And seals must be drawn with both of participants' blood. That's an interesting piece of information. Thank you, Naruto-kun. Equals flashback end equals. Naruto's grin got even wider as he ran out of his room to train. 1 year later somewhere in Kase no Kuni equals. Somewhere in the desert of Kase no Kuni, 2 swirls started ripping the space. From those appeared 3 people. Those people were Zetsu, Tobi and Naruto. Naruto didn't change in the past year, if only grew a couple of inches tall. Actually he looked more like a 13-year-old teen rather than a 10-year-old pre-teen. He now wore black high-collar shirt with a Uchiha crest on his back, long black pants with many pockets on them, and black shinobi sandals. His hair was now a bit longer too, reaching his shoulders, and he also had a long bang covering his right eye and reaching his cheek. You know dad, I can never thank you enough for your latest gift, this thing is just too damn useful. Tobi's response was a loud laugh. You thanked me enough already. And remember what I told you, I only gave you the tools to become great, your job is to use them and become great. Naruto grinned at the elder Sharingan wielder. I will never forget that. But that said, he pulled out an all too familiar journal and opened it. After going through several one-handed hand seals, he put his palm on said journal. His palm glowed with chakra and after several seconds, a long white snake popped out of the journal and began making its way somewhere into the desert. Quick, we must follow that snake, it will take us to the portal, said Naruto and started chasing after the snake with Zetsu and Tobi running behind him. After about 20 minutes of running through the desert, they finally stopped after spotting white snake curled around a little square rock. Let's try it. Open, hissed Naruto, but after waiting a couple of seconds, nothing happened. He was about to try again when sand around them started to vibrate and suddenly a wall that resembled a closed gate emerged from under his feet. Well, I guess this is it huh? Asked young Uchiha as he turned around to meet his father's gaze. I will miss you Naruto-kun, and if you need something, you know what to do, said the masked man, patting his right pocket which had a bulge resembling a scroll. Yeah, I sure do, responded blue-eyed preteen, letting out a small chuckle. Well then, I'll see you later. And don't forget, I will visit every year for a couple of months, said Naruto, stepping through the portal. Equals other side of the portal equals. When Naruto stepped out of the portal, he could tell that it was cold and after a few minutes of looking around, he knew that he was on a very high point, on a big mountain to be precise. He could see the light of the city that was far ahead. Ready or not, here I come, said smirking raven-haired Uchiha as he jumped high in the air and his eyes momentarily changed to the Rinnegan. Next second, he was flying toward the city like a rocket, flames coming out from under his feet. Haha gotta love Asura path was his thought as he flew on a very high speed. Naruto landed in a dark alleyway and hid himself in a shadow of the night. This Tokyo seems pretty big and from what I've seen, it seems like it's pretty crowded here. Also it looks like this world's technologies far surpass ours, but they are unable to access chakra. Though from what I could sense, there are a fair number of people with high levels of yin energy, which indicates that they are wizards. But first thing first, I need more information about this world before I attempt to do anything. He waited patiently for somebody to pee by the alleyway that he was hiding in. He didn't have to wait long. Middle-aged man was calmly walking toward the place where Naruto was hiding himself in, not paying much attention to anything. From his scan, young Uchiha could tell that this man was just a civilian and it was exactly what he needed. Blue-eyed Jinchuriki quickly sprang forward from the shadow and grabbed the unfortunate man by his head. Poor man could only stare at his attacker in shock before Naruto forcibly dragged man's soul out his body and absorbed into himself, gaining all of his victim's memories. Before the soulless body could hit the ground, Naruto caught it and dragged it into the shadows, along with himself. After he successfully hid the body, he closed his and settled down into the meditating position to analyze new memories that he gained. After he was finished with his current task, which took no more than 5 minutes, he opened his eyes, stood up, and hinged into the man he just killed. Interesting, how very interesting indeed. Such an intriguing world that holds unlimited knowledge and resources. And what is even more interesting is that normal civilians are not aware of the wizarding world, even though wizards walk among them. But I'm quite lucky that this man didn't have any family of his own, nobody will search for him. And now that I think about it, I better burn the body. But the quick Kaiten. Nkakuk no jutsu, body was gone, leaving only ashes. He proceeded to exit the alleyway, making his way into the town, with a huge smirk plastered on his face. Well, let's not waste any more time, after all, we have so much to explore. 2 months later, October 23, 1990 . In the past 2 months, Naruto learned a lot about this new world he found himself in. To say he was amazed would be an understatement. He thought about how very similar his and this world seemed to be, but at the same time so very different. Now he was sitting on the tip of the Tokyo Tower, gazing at the night sky, as the lights of many lanterns, buildings, cars were shining beneath him. Now the question is, which way should I choose to travel? I could take a plane to America and then one more plane to the UK, or I could take a boat to Russia, travel through it in Europe, reaching the UK. What should I do? Better take a plane to America. I don't have time to travel, and plus, I would have many more opportunities in America. Well, it's decided then. Oh well, it's been fun hanging around Tokyo, but I need to get moving. I bet it won't be pleasant sitting in the damn plane for 12 hours. Sigh, I guess I will just have to endure it. With his next destination decided, he stood up and stretched. He then looked down and smirked. Oh, how I love this feeling, said Naruto, and jumped from the tallest structure in Tokyo, his face splitting in a huge grin as he soared toward the ground. And just as he was about to hit the ground, he disappeared, not even leaving a trace of him being there. Several weeks later USNY. Naruto was standing in a crowded street somewhere in New York, preparing to start the execution of his plan. Said plan formed in Uchiha's head around a week ago while watching a movie. Flashback. I don't like this were the thoughts of one Uchiha Naruto as he sat of a shack that he found while jumping from roof to roof around New York. I could survive in worse conditions, but it does not mean that I have to like this. It gets so annoying sitting here with all this old and broken stuff around. Damn it, I need money and I need a lot of it. And so he started thinking of the best way to get a lot of money in a short period of time and fast. Unexpectedly, his answer came from a movie that he was watching at the time. Previously mentioned movie was about criminals trying to rob a bank. That's it. I just need to rob a bank. But wait, why stop with just one bank? A wide grin appeared on his face as he started thinking of a plan to clean several banks empty. Flashback and . From that point it was quite easy. He decided to hit 10 largest banks in the USA. First thing he did was to create 3 Mokuten Bunshin and send each one to a different state. After that, he proceeded to collect as much information about targeted banks as he could, which was quite a lot. And now, as he was standing in front of one of the banks he decided to rob, hanged as a middle-aged woman, he was preparing for the final part of his plan. Though unlike those fake bandits in a movie, Naruto wasn't planning to barge in, with guns and masks, screaming bloody murder. Oh no, far from it. He would take every last cent and not a soul would notice it. But he knew that if he did what he intended to do, he would up this country's economy quite a bit. Who gives a shit? I certainly don't. And with that thought in mind, he started crossing a street, heading toward the bank, still in his disguise. He entered a large building and walked to the security guy. Hello, I am very sorry sir, but could I please use this bank's restroom? Tall, muscular man merely stared at her, but after several seconds answered. Sorry ma'am, but only our staff has access to it. Naruto's eyes changed to Sharingan and started spinning. But sir, I really need it right now. There was no reply from the security guy for a minute, but then, as if in trance, he turned around and gestured for Naruto to follow. As soon as they reached the restroom, Uchiha looked in the man's eyes, still spinning, and ordered. Now, you will go back to your post and forget about me. Without replying, the bulky man walked back, not giving anybody a second glance. Seeing as the first part of the final stage was complete, Naruto activated his Rinnegan. And as soon as he did, 3 more pictures popped in his mind, which were from the clone's point of view. As soon as he confirmed that his clone successfully infiltrated every bank that was assigned to them, he deactivated Rinnegan and switched back to Sharingan. He released his henge, revealing his smaller frame, dressed in black, spandex bodysuit. Time to test how my new seal works, thought raven-haired Uchiha as he sent chakra into his bodysuit and activated 2 seals that were drawn on his spandex suits and head area. As soon as the seals activated, Naruto disappeared completely, though his shadow, which was created from a bright lamp in the restroom, remained. Let's see if it worked. He turned around and looked in the mirror, only to see nothing but thin air. Ha! It worked. Still, I will have to do something about this shadow, it could blow my cover. Thought ex-blonde as he exited the restroom and stealthily made his way toward the vault, which was located at the lowest level of this bank, avoiding several armed men. I still haven't named my new seal. Aha. First one will be a camouflage seal, and the second will be a see-through seal. Yep, that will do. Wait. Why the hell am I even thinking about this shit while robbing a bank? Sigh, I have pretty up mind. And with that disturbing thought in mind, young Uchiha reached the big door of the vault. I definitely need to thank Dad for his last gift that he gave me, though Naruto, and phased through the door that led to the vault. Once he was solid again, he found himself in a room full of cash, gold and little cases on every wall. Infiltration success now for the last stage of my plan, was Shinobi's thought as a wide grin spread on his face. He put his hand on his hip and channeled some chakra into it, which revealed a storage seal. There was a little cloud of smoke, and a second later, Naruto had a little white scroll in his hand. He opened the scroll that he held and put it on the floor. Good thing that I created more than one 2-way storage scroll. He then proceeded to make about 10 shadow clones and ordered them to empty all vaults, as he himself started doing just that. As soon as he opened one of the cases, he put all that was on top of the open scroll and channeled some chakra into it, causing all cash, gold and jewelry to disappear with a cloud of smoke. Meanwhile, safe house equals. Naruto's clone was sitting in the middle of the room with a huge open scroll behind him and 10 little open scrolls in front of him. He was currently staring intently at the small scrolls without averting his gaze. As soon as one of the scroll's colors changed from white to bright red, the clone pressed its hand on top of it, causing goods from the bank to appear. He quickly grabbed everything and sealed it into the huge scroll that was behind him. Back with the original Naruto. Raven-haired boy activated the Rinnegan to check if everything was in order. When he made sure that things were working out as they were supposed to, he deactivated his ninjutsu and continued to collect everything that was a huge vault. 10 minutes later. Seems like this is all there was. And now is the time to get the hell out of here, thought Naruto, and one more time turned on his ninjutsu, checking if his other clones were done as well. When he confirmed that everything had gone as planned, he summoned a little piece of paper and a brush. "Summon me back to safe house," he wrote with black ink and put it into a 2-way storage scroll. He waited a couple of seconds before he disappeared in a cloud of smoke, leaving the vault almost completely empty. Several hours later, when guards would enter a vault, they would find nothing but a little piece of paper on which would be written just 2 sentences. "Thank you for letting me use your restroom. P.S. You guys have really nice soaps." December 10th NY 1990 . Naruto walked down a dark alley, looking straight ahead, not even paying any attention to the thugs that were looking at him like a piece of meat. Couple more steps later, he stopped and turned to his right and walked toward black metal door. He stood still for a second before knocking on a large door. For several minutes there was no answer, only silence. But then the door opened, revealing a man around his 50s, looking at the child in front of him intently. He was dressed in a simple white shirt and black pants. His hair white and short, while his eyes were black and wide. "What do you want, kid?" "I don't have any candy for you, if that's what you want," said the old man, with a rough voice. Naruto merely chuckled and looked up into the man's eyes. "Sorry to disappoint you, but I didn't come here for any kind of candy. Though I did come here to ask you for something." "And what would that be?" asked white-haired man suspiciously. "You see, old man, I came here to get the first love of my life," answered the raven-haired kid, letting out a small laugh. "Huh? What you talking about, kid? I ain't got your girlfriend here," or he was cut off by Uchiha's laugh. "Who said that it was a person I was talking about?" said a grinning Naruto. "Then what is it?" asked a frustrated and at the same time curious old man. "You would know, you actually make them," was the kid's answer. Hearing this, the man suddenly became quiet and started looking at the raven-haired boy suspiciously. "How do you know about this?" "I quit making them a year ago and I don't plan on starting again." This only caused Naruto's grin to grow larger. I am sure that we will come to an agreement. After all, money is no problem at all. And what I want will get you a lot of it. Young Uchiha put his hand in his pocket, withdrew a sheet of paper, and handed it to the man in front of him. I want 3 pairs of those by the end of this month. I am sure you can handle this job. After all, I heard that you are the best at what you do. Kid, are you really serious about this? Asked the man hesitantly. Absolutely. Answered Naruto brightly. The old man was silent for a moment before a wicked grin appeared on his face. Then what are we standing here for? Come on in and let's talk about details. He turned around and walked back, gesturing for Naruto to follow. 20 days later. Naruto had an ear-to-ear grin as he looked at the open case that was on the table in front of him. There, the black case, lay 3 pairs of guns, or more specifically handguns. 3 of them were pitch black and the other half was silver with light brown handles. So what do you think? Asked an old gun maker. I love it. Did you do everything as I ordered? Of course, as you said, I am best at what I do, was his quick reply. Old man smirked as Naruto picked up 1 pair of guns, with 1 hand each, and started examining them. 39 centimeters in length, weighs 16 kilograms, fires 13mm rounds, magazine consists of 12 plus 1 bullet, and of course special explosive bullets from the metal you gave me. Black gun in your right hand is a semi-automatic one, with greater power in it, and white one in your left hand is fully automatic, with greater speed. Said white-haired man. Excellent. Said Naruto in an almost maniacal manner, and put his guns back the case. Of course I will have to add a couple of seals that I designed specially for these babies. But I can think about it later. He mentally added. You did a very good job. And I am really thankful. He pulled up his own brown case and put it on the table, next to black one. But you can't put a thank you in your pocket, so here's your money for the job. Said Uchiha and opened his case, revealing many packs of cash. Just as the man moved to collect his pay, his head was smashed into the floor, courtesy of Naruto's right hand. Fool, you should never trust a shinobi. Said a raven-haired ninja, removing the old man's soul from his body and quickly absorbing it into himself. Gotta thank Dad later for sending me chakra metal. These bullets will be so much better than the regular one. Just the mere thought of my bullet, induced with Winder Fire Chakra, flying at my enemy, gives me the urge to just run outside and start killing people to test that idea, and of course just for the of it. Ha 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 ha. And with that insane thought in mind, he made his way toward the exit with 2 cases, one swung over his shoulder and other by his side. 2 minutes later. Naruto was walking down the street without care in the world, whistling a happy tune. When suddenly the sound of an explosion ripped the air. But raven-haired Uchiha didn't even pause for a second. He just kept walking, with his happy demeanor still in its place. That would be what a stranger would see upon laying his eyes on the child. But if somebody was to look in his head, they would see a maniacally laughing kid with a gleeful expression. Ah, gotta love the C4. It probably has to be there now. But oh well, no use thinking about it. After all, I still have so much to do. Get to the UK, buy a big house, get bad car, make some legit looking documents for myself, send a letter to Hogwarts, and so much more. I better get my in gear. As his process of thought ended, he suddenly stopped. God damn it. I'm thinking about S too much. I need to have or my mind will explode. Ugh, I'm 11-year-old and I'm thinking about as if my life depends on it. My mind is seriously ed up, you brain, and you too, body, it's all your damn fault. Sigh, I don't have time for this right now, but I will definitely have time for this in Hogwarts. Naruto let out a rather audible perverted giggle, which caused people that were pinged by to take a step away from him, wondering what was up with this insane kid. July 2nd, London -1990. Last couple of months were pretty productive for Naruto, to say the least. When he first arrived in London, he did exactly what he did the last 2 times when he arrived into the new city, absorbed 2 souls, one from a regular civilian and another from a wizard. And of course, after learning about the British wizarding world, he immediately visited Diagon Alley. His first stop at Diagon Alley was Gringotts. And after seeing everything it had to offer, he instantly took a liking to it. But of course, like everything else he did, there was a reason behind coming to Gringotts. Or more specifically 2 reasons. His first reason for coming to this particular bank was to claim rights on the vault that belonged to Salazar Slytherin. Of course, it took quite a bit of time to prove that he was indeed heir to the Slytherin family, and even more time to get access to Salazar's personal vault, which was actually his main reason for coming to Gringotts. He was pleasantly surprised to find a good sum of money, several books on different types of magic and potions waiting for him in, now his, vault. He also requested a new vault of his own, where he would be able to keep part of his wealth, which was actually his second reason for going there. Goblins happily complied after hearing how much money he was going to store in his newly acquired vault. In the end, Naruto decided to put only half of his wealth, which was around 10 billion US dollars, and transfer that sum of money into the galleons. In the end, coupled with money that was in Salazar's vault, he had 714,272, 109 galleons in total. All in all, raven-haired youth left Gringotts very satisfied and happy. His next stop was Ollivander's wand shop. Not that he needed a wand, he could do almost everything wandless, thanks to his chakra control M and Senju genes, which provided him even greater control. Though he still needed a lot of focus to cast a spell endlessly. He was sure that with some practice, it would be much easier. But from what he gathered so far, the wand was working as conductor and amplifier for the user's magic. And after some thoughts on his part, Naruto decided to get himself a wand. For one, it would help him learn magic, and two, it would help him keep a low profile. Of course, before even thinking about buying a wand, he learned as much as he could about the art of wand making. He could still remember it like it was just yesterday. Flashback. This shop that he was currently looking at was narrow and shabby. Peeling gold letters over the door read Ollivander's. Makers of fine wands since 382 BC. A single wand lay on a faded purple cushion in the dusty window. A tinkling bell rang somewhere in the depths of the shop as he stepped out. It was a tiny place, empty except for a single, spindly chair. "Good afternoon," said a soft voice. Naruto looked toward the counter to see an old man with wide pale eyes staring at him curiously. "Hello," said Uchiha in return, not surprised and a bit by the appearance of an old man. "What can I help you with, young man?" asked Mr. Ollivander. Naruto Uchiha. "I need a wand. I am starting my first year in Hogwarts," answered Naruto, not taking his eyes from Ollivander's pale ones. "Well then, let's see what I can find for you. I have a lot wands here, you just need to." "You misunderstood. I do not wish to buy one of your wands. I want you to make one from the materials that I will give you. It's a tradition in our family." Old man had a look of interest on his face. "Forgive me, but I don't recall hearing about the Uchiha family." "That's okay, we recently moved here from Japan." "I see. Is there something else that I should know?" "There is in fact something. You see, the materials for my wand are very unique. And I am not sure that any other wand maker would be able to do it." Naruto reached into his jacket's inner pocket and pulled out a black rod and some light-colored substance in a little transparent bag. "Good thing that dad has a two-way storage scroll, otherwise I wouldn't have gotten Hashirama's cells in time. I want you to use this." Uchiha pointed at a black rod as a wood, and as he held out a little bag. "As wand's core. Can you do it?" Mr. Ollivander carefully picked up black rod to examine it. "How very interesting, I have never seen anything like this. I can literally feel power surging through it," said the old man in amazement. "I would be surprised if you did. This was created from several minerals that grow only in Japan." A lied man looked at Naruto with a serious expression. 1 month. "Your wand will be done in 1 month, Mr. Uchiha," said. Uchiha smirked and without a word turned around and exited a store. But not before telling one last sentence to Mr. Ollivander. "I will be back in 1 month for my wand then." Flashback. And what a magnificent wand it was. Ollivander even priced it as the greatest wand that I ever did, and Naruto full-heartedly agreed with him. After all, he very much doubted that anybody else had a wand made from chakra rod and Senju Hashirama's cells. His new wand was pitch black, with equally black leather handle and 12 inches in length. Of course, after he got his wand, he quickly applied several seals onto it to prevent its destruction. And after he was done, he could proudly say that there was practically nothing that could destroy it, or at least by any normal means. And once again, he mentally thanked Zetsu for giving him Uzumaki's scroll. And speaking of seals, Naruto covered his house, which was quite large, in seals that would prevent anybody from outside to sense any chakra, and by extension magic, coming from his house. Thanks to that, he could freely practice spells on his own and not get in trouble for underage magic use. But back to the present, Uchiha was waiting for a reply to his letter that he sent to Albus Dumbledore, requesting entrance into Hogwarts. Naruto of course knew that the old headmaster would not deny him entry, especially after he threw in the line heir to the most ancient and noble house of Slytherin. And speak of devil, Brown Owl flew through his open window and landed on his dining table in front of him, carrying the yellowish envelope addressed in emerald green to Mr. N. Uchiha, The Kitchen, 15 Hayes Mews, London. He picked up the envelope, shooed the owl that was sitting on his table, and pulled out the letter. Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Headmaster. Albus Dumbledore. Order of Merlin, 1st CL, Grand Sork. CHF. Warlock, Supreme Mugwump, International Conft. Of Wizards. Dear Mr. Uchiha. We are pleased to inform you that you have been accepted at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Please find enclosed a list of all necessary books and equipment. Term begins on September 1st. We await your owl by no later than July 31. Yours sincerely, Minerva McGonagall. Deputy Headmistress. Naruto sighed. Great, now I need to buy an owl. There was one more piece of paper, which Naruto guessed was the list of things that he needed to buy. He unfolded it and read. Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Uniform. First-year students will require 1. 3 sets of plain work robes, black. 2. 1 plain pointed hat, black, for day wear. 3. 1 pair of protective gloves, dragon hide or similar. 4. 1 winter cloak, black, silver fastenings. Please note that all pupils' clothes should carry name tags. Course books. All students should have a copy of each of the following. The Standard Book of Spells, Grade 1, by Miranda Goshik. The History of Magic by Bathilda Bagshot. Magical Theory by Adalbert Waffling. A Beginner's Guide to Transfiguration by Emeric Switch. 1000 Magical Herbs and Fungi by Felita Spore. Magical Drafts and Potions by Arsenius Jigger. Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them by Newt Scamander. The Dark Forces. A Guide to Self-Protection by Quentin Trimble. Other equipment. 1 wand. 1 cauldron, pewter, standard size 2. 1 set of GL or crystal files. 1 telescope set. 1 BR scales. Students may also bring an owl or a cat or a toad. Parents are reminded that first years are not allowed their own broomsticks. And just as he suspected, he needed to buy a shitload of things. Equals September 1st. Naruto's equals. Naruto woke up early in the morning. He was really excited. Not because he was going to learn magic or some other typical bullshit, oh no. His excitement was caused by the fact that soon he was going to see Salazar's own basilisk. Oh, he couldn't wait to see her. He made himself a quick breakfast and after finishing it, got dressed in black t-shirt, blue jeans and white sneakers. He was pretty tall for his age and coupled with his muscles, made him look like a boy in his mid-teens. Uchiha quickly locked every door in his house and activated seals on the house. I pity those poor bastards who will try and rob my house. When he was outside, along with his trunk, raven-haired Slytherin took a cab to King's Cross. Equals King's Cross 10:30 equals. When he finally arrived at King's Cross, he quickly made his way toward platform 9, only to discover that there was no such platform as 9 3/4. He quickly scanned his surroundings with Sharingan and found out that there was a barrier between platform 9 and 10. Naruto was almost sure that this was it, but he needed to be completely sure before he did anything. After all, who knows what kind of shit he would get himself into if he stepped through the wrong barrier. And of course the man, whose memories Naruto acquired, didn't know anything about Hogwarts. Apparently he was homeschooled. He looked around again and saw a skinny, short kid with black, unruly hair, wearing a pair of glasses, looking around in panic, as if expecting somebody to attack him. But what got Naruto's attention was his high level of yin chakra and the trunk he was carrying. Coming to the conclusion that this kid was also a wizard, he decided to approach him. Yo, said Naruto from behind the kid, causing the poor boy to jump a little. Uchiha merely rolled his eyes at the boy's action. Name's Naruto Uchiha, so you're going to Hogwarts too? Asked the blue-eyed male, causing the shorter boy's face to light up as if Christmas had come. Yes, could you he managed to mumble. Tell you where the entrance is? Asked Uchiha. In reply, Naruto received only a nod. Yeah, about that, I don't know either. I actually came to ask you. Sighed Naruto. He looked around again for any sign of wizards, trying to sense any high-level chakra. He picked up several signatures coming toward him, and when he looked in the direction of said signatures, he could see a family of redheads. Look kid, I'm not a helping type of a guy, but if you want to tag along for now, it's fine. You're gonna end up asking me anyway. Said Naruto, starting to walk toward the redheads. Okay. Was the kid's only reply. By the way, you never told me your name. Oh, sorry about that, guess I forgot. My name is Harry Potter, nice to meet you Naruto. Harry Potter huh? I think I heard this name somewhere before. But never mind that now. Also Naruto noticed Harry stuffing for a moment when he said that he heard his name, he didn't comment on it. Excuse me said Naruto as he approached the plump woman. Hello, dears. First time at Hogwarts. Ron's new too. She said and pointed at the last and youngest of her sons. He was tall, thick, and gangling, with freckles, big hands and feet and a long nose. Naruto glanced at him for a second but quickly looked back at the woman. Yes. I'm Naruto Uchiha, he smiled pleasantly at the woman, trying to look like an innocent kid. And he gestured to Harry. Harry, taking a hint, introduced himself as well, causing the whole family to gasp and look at him in wonder. You see, we are a bit lost here. Could you be so kind as to show us how to get onto the platform said Naruto, flashing them his charming smile. Yes, of course, do not worry. Oh, and my name is Molly Weasley, this is Ginny, Fred and George, and this is Percy. She pointed at the small girl, twins, and what looked like the oldest son respectively. All you have to do is walk straight at the barrier between platforms 9 and 10. Don't stop and don't be scared you'll crash into it, that's very important. Best to do it at a bit of a run if you're nervous," said the woman in the group. "Thank you Mrs. Weasley, you were very helpful," said Naruto, with his charming smile still in its place. "So I was right, huh?" He turned around, not waiting for a reply, and walked straight through the barrier. The Scarlet steam engine was waiting next to a platform packed with people. A sign overhead said Hogwarts Express, 11 o'clock. Smoke from the engine drifted over the heads of the chattering crowd, while cats of every color wound here and there between their owls hooted to one another in a disgruntled sort of way over the babble and the scraping of heavy trunks. The first few carriages were already packed with students, some hanging out of the window to talk to their families, some fighting over seats. Naruto pushed his trunk through the crowd in search of an empty seat. He finally found an empty compartment near the end of the train. He lifted his trunk, put through train doors, and took a seat near the window, trying to relax. But 2 minutes later, the door of his compartment opened, revealing Harry, dragging his trunk behind. "Hey do you mind if I started Harry?" "Sit here," finished Naruto, getting a nod from Harry. "Sure, make yourself at home, just don't make too much noise. I want this ride to be at least somewhat relaxing." After getting another nod from the shorter male, he went back to relaxing in his seat. But as Naruto's luck would have it, several more minutes later, the door opened again. Blue-eyed Uchiha silently groaned at being disturbed. He looked toward the door and saw a red head standing there, Ron, if remembered correctly. "Anyone sitting there?" Ron pointed at the seat next to Harry. "Everywhere else is full." "I will tell you the same thing as I told Harry, you can stay if you keep quiet," answered Naruto. Ron was about to say something when twins popped out behind him. "Pair on. Listen, we're going down the middle of the train. Lee Jordan's got a tarantula down there." "Right," mumbled Ron. Twins looked the compartment. "Hey Harry and hey, Harem." "Uchiha, Naruto Uchiha." "Wow, is that some kind of Chinese name?" "It's Japanese actually, it means maelstrom." "Whoa, that sounds cool. So you are Japanese huh? How did you get into Hogwarts?" "I never said that I actually live in Japan. I was born in Japan but moved to America several years later and this year, my dad and I moved to London." "We see," said the twins together. "Must have been fun." "Well, see you later, then," said identical Weasleys and slid the compartment door shut behind them. "Are you really Harry Potter?" Ron blurted out, which caused Naruto to groan louder than before. Harry nodded. "And have you really got you know?" He pointed at Harry's forehead. Harry pulled back his bangs to show the lightning scar. Ron started. And in that moment, Naruto's eyes flew open. "That's it," Uchiha almost yelled. Harry and Ron looked at him strangely, but Naruto ignored them. "I finally remembered where I heard your name," said the raven-haired shinobi, pointing at Harry. "You're the guy that supposedly defeated some dark wizard, right? What was his name again?" "Voldemort," answered Harry suddenly. Ron gaped at Harry, looking at him as if he was some sort of alien. "Oh yeah, Voldemort. It's a bit full though. I guess that guy wasn't that good with names huh?" Now Ron was gaping at both of them. "What?" asked Naruto, already irritated at the redhead staring. "You both said you know whose name," said Ron, sounding both shocked and impressed. But before he could continue, he was cut off by Naruto. "What's so special about his name anyway? You look almost afraid of it. Do people not say it or something?" "A lot of people remember those times and are still afraid of saying his name," answered Ron. "What? People are afraid of the names of all things?" "Dude, that's bullshit," said Naruto. There was a moment of awkward silence, well awkward for Harry and Ron. As for Naruto, he pretty much enjoyed several moments of silence. It was actually Harry who broke the silence by asking a question. "Are all your family wizards?" Yes, I think so," said Ron. "I think mom's got a second cousin who's an accountant, but we never talk about him. My only family member is my father and he is a wizard, so I guess my answer would be yes," said Naruto. "So you both must know loads of magic already." "I know some," replied Uchiha. "I heard you went to live with muggles," said Ron to Harry. "What are they like?" "Horrible, well, not all of them. My aunt and uncle and cousin are, though. Wish I had 3 wizard brothers," was Harry's answer. "Hive," said Ron. For some reason, he was looking gloomy. "I'm the 6th in our family to go to Hogwarts. You could say I've got a lot to live up to. Bill and Charlie have already left. Bill was head boy and Charlie was captain of Quidditch. Now Percy's a prefect. Fred and George mess around a lot, but they still get really good marks and everyone thinks they're really funny. Everyone expects me to do as well as the others, but if I do, it's no big deal, because they did it first. You never get anything new, either, with 5 brothers. I've got Bill's old robes, Charlie's old wand, and Percy's old rat. Ron reached his jacket and pulled out a fat grey rat, which was asleep. His name's Scabbers and he's useless, he hardly ever wakes up. Naruto snorted after hearing this. Percy got an owl from my dad for being made a prefect, but they couldn't I got Scabbers instead. Ron's ears went pink. He seemed to think he'd said too much, because he went back to staring out of the window. Ah, so he's from a poor family, huh? I better not tell him that I'm loaded, or he will be even more annoying. After that, Naruto zoned out, trying to take a little nap. When Naruto woke up from his little nap, it was already 12:30. He heard some clattering outside in the corridor, and a smiling, dimpled woman slid back their door and said, "Anything off the cart, dears?" Naruto quickly glanced toward it and then back to staring out of the window. He wasn't really hungry, and if he wanted some sweets, he always had some chocolate bars on him. Shit. How did I become so addicted to chocolate? All this chocolate is going to be death of me. He saw Harry getting up and buying himself some of everything. Naruto himself would have done the same, he always loved exploring. But he already knew how all these candies tasted. He bought them, not so long ago, in Diagon Alley. Ron stared as Harry brought it all back into the compartment and tipped it onto an empty seat. "Hungry, are you?" "Starving," said Harry, taking a large bite out of a pumpkin pasty. Ron had taken out a lumpy package and unwrapped it. There were 4 sandwiches. He pulled one of them apart and said, "She always forgets I don't like corned beef." "Swap you for one of these," said Harry, holding up a pasty. "Go on." "You don't want this, it's all dry," said Ron. "She hasn't got much time," he added quickly, "you know, with 5 of us." "Go on, have a pasty," said Harry, and then turned to Naruto. "Don't you want any, Naruto?" "No, thank you, I am not hungry." And went back to napping. He was brought back to the world of consciousness by the knock on the door. When he looked toward the door, he could see a round-faced boy standing there, looking tearful. "Sorry," he said, "but have you seen a toad at all?" When they shook their heads, he wailed, "I've lost him. He keeps getting away from me." "He'll turn up," said Harry. "Yes," said the boy miserably. "Well, if you see him." Naruto stayed quiet, not wanting to get involved. And then the boy left. "Don't know why he's so bothered," said Ron. "If I'd brought a toad I'd lose it as quickly as I could. Mind you, I brought Scabbers, so I can't talk." Oh, how wrong he was. One of the most famous shinobi in all elemental nations actually had a summon contract with toads. Though he was right, regular toads are useless. "He might have died and you wouldn't know the difference," said Ron in disgust. "I tried to turn him yellow yesterday to make him more interesting, but the spell didn't work. I'll show you, look." He rummaged around in his trunk and pulled out a very battered looking wand. It was chipped in places and something white was glinting at the end. Unicorn hairs nearly poking out. Anyway. Yep, thought Naruto to himself. This family is really poor. He had just raised his wand when the compartment door slid open again. The toadless boy was back, but this time he had a girl with him. She was already wearing her new Hogwarts robes. "Has anyone seen a toad?" "Neville's lost one," she said. She had a bossy sort of voice, lots of bushy brown hair, and rather large front teeth. "We've already told him we haven't seen it," said Ron, but the girl wasn't listening, she was looking at the wand in his hand. "Oh, are you doing magic? Let's see it then." She sat down. Ron looked taken aback. Alright. Sunshine, daisies, mellow. Turn this stupid fat rat yellow." He waved his wand, but nothing happened. Stayed grey and fast asleep. Hearing this, and then seeing the result, caused Naruto to burst out laughing. He couldn't help it, it was just too hilarious. Ron went red. "What's so funny?" demanded Rinoti. "You're an idiot, that's what." "Oh, I gotta shake hands with whoever told you this spell, I haven't laughed so hard in ages," answered Shinobi. "So what you're saying is that this spell is not real?" asked Harry. "Of course not. You must be a complete idiot to actually think that it would work," said Naruto, still laughing. Ron went even redder. "Well, if you're so smart, why don't you do it?" Naruto just smirked. He took out his wand from his inner pocket, pointed it at a still sleeping rat, and made a little swishing motion with it. In a second, the rat turned green. Naruto continued smirking, while Ron openly gaped at him. But before the redhead could say anything, he was cut off by the bushy-haired girl. "Wow, you're really good. I've tried a few simple spells just for practice, and it's all worked for me. Nobody in my family's magic at all. It was ever such a surprise when I got my letter, but I was ever so pleased, of course, I mean, it's the very best school of witchcraft there is. I've learned all our course books by heart, of course. I just hope it will be enough. I'm Hermione Granger, by the way, who are you?" She said all this very fast. Naruto looked at her, amused by her antics. He looked at Harry and Ron and saw that they both had the same stunned expression on their faces. He nearly burst out laughing again at the look on their faces. "Naruto Uchiha," answered a raven-haired ninja, still looking amused. "I'm Ron Weasley," Ron mumbled. "Harry Potter," said Harry. "Are you really?" said Hermione. "I know all about you, of course I got a few extra books for background reading, and you're in modern magical history and the rise and fall of the dark arts and great wizarding events of the 20th century." "Am I?" asked Harry. "Goodness, didn't you know, I'd have found out everything I could if it was me," said Hermione. "Do either of you know what house you'll be in?" "I've been asking around, and I hope I'm in Gryffindor, it sounds by far the best. I hear Dumbledore himself was in it, but I suppose Ravenclaw wouldn't be too bad anyway. We'd better go and look for Neville's toad." "You two had better change, you know, I expect we'll be there soon." And she left, taking the toadless boy with her. "Heh, she can say a lot in one breath, I wonder what else she can do in one breath, haha were perverted thoughts of Naruto. "Whatever house I'm in, I hope she's not in it," he heard Ron saying, and then throwing his wand back into his trunk. "Stupid spell, George gave it to me, but he knew it was a dud." "Ah, so that's who I need to thank for providing me with some entertainment," commented Naruto, receiving glare in return. "What house are your brothers in?" asked Harry, looking at Ron. "Gryffindor," said Ron. Gloom seemed to be settling on him again. "Mom and Dad were in it too. I don't know what they'll say if I'm not. I don't suppose Ravenclaw would be too bad, but imagine if they put me in Slytherin." "That's the house Vol I mean, you know who was in?" asked Harry. "Yeah," said Ron. He flopped back into his seat, looking depressed. "So what house do you think you will be in?" asked Ron after a few seconds. "Oh, I don't know," mumbled Harry. When Ron turned to Naruto, he received only one word in reply. "Slytherin." "Slytherin?" asked Ron, looking scandalized. "Why would you want to be with those snakes?" "Because Slytherin suits me the most," answered Naruto. He didn't wait for Ron or Harry to comment on it, instead choosing to close his eyes and take another short nap. But once again the compartment door slid open. Now, instead of a bushy-haired girl and round-faced boy, 3 boys entered. "Are you kidding me? What is this? A meeting room or something?" Blue-eyed Shinobi yelled out and stood up. "You?" He pointed at the pale-looking boy with blonde hair. "What do you want?" he demanded. I just wanted to see if it's true that Harry Potter is on the train." A blonde boy stuttered out, while 2 bodyguard-like boys stood behind him, in shock. "Yes, it's true, there he is." He pointed at Harry. "Happy? Now get thee out and don't come back," yelled Naruto and threw 3 boys outside, locking the door behind them. "Odd, what do I have to do to get several minutes of silence?" he asked himself and went back to his seat to take yet another nap. Hopefully he won't get interrupted until they arrive at Hogwarts. Though he missed the gaping looks of Harry and Ron as he fell asleep. The voice echoing through the train was the one that woke him up. "We will be reaching Hogwarts in 5 minutes' time. Please leave your luggage on the train, it will be taken to the school separately." He quickly changed into the Hogwarts uniform. And before he knew it, he was standing on the dark platform, surrounded by the crowd of students. "First years over here," he heard the voice calling. He looked over the place where the voice came from and saw a huge man with a big hairy face. His name was Hagrid, if he remembered right from what Harry told him. "Come on, follow me any more first years. Mind your step, now. First years follow me." He followed, along with the rest of the students, who were slipping and stumbling on what seemed to be a steep, narrow path. "You'll get your first sight of Hogwarts in a sec," Hagrid called over his shoulder, "just as round this bend here." There was a loud ooh. The narrow path had opened suddenly onto the edge of a great black lake. Perched atop a high mountain on the other side, its windows sparkling in the starry sky, was a vast castle with many turrets and towers. "No more in fort to a boat," Hagrid called, pointing to a fleet of little boats sitting in the water by the shore. Naruto sat down in one of them, not really paying attention to who was with him in the boat. "Everyone in?" shouted Hagrid, who had a boat to himself. "Right then forward." And the fleet of little boats moved off all at once, gliding across the lake, which was as smooth as GL. Everyone was silent, staring up at the great castle overhead. It towered over them as they sailed nearer and nearer to the cliff on which it stood. "Heads down," yelled Hagrid as the first boats reached the cliff. They all bent their heads, and the little boats carried them through a curtain of ivy that hid a wide opening in the cliff face. They were carried along a dark tunnel, which seemed to be taking them right underneath the castle, until they reached a kind of underground harbor, where they clambered out onto rocks and pebbles. "Boy, you there. Is this your toad?" said Hagrid, who was checking the boats as people climbed out of them. "Trevor!" cried Neville blissfully, holding out his hands. Then they clambered up a pageway in the rock after Hagrid's lamp, coming out at last onto smooth damp GR right in the shadow of the castle. They walked up a flight of stone steps and crowded around the huge oak front door. "Everyone here? You still got your toad?" Hagrid raised a gigantic fist and knocked 3 times on the castle door. The door swung open at once. A tall, black-haired witch in emerald green robes stood there. DCH, by the look on her face, you would think that she has a foot-long stick up her. Damn, joking with her would be no fun, she will only get on my nerves after that. "The first years, Professor McGonagall," said Hagrid. "Thank you, Hagrid. I will take them from here." She pulled the door wide. The entrance hall was pretty big. The stone walls were lit with flaming torches like the ones at Gringotts, the ceiling was too high to make out, and a magnificent marble staircase facing them led to the upper floors. They followed Professor McGonagall across the flagged stone floor. Naruto could hear the drone of hundreds of voices from a doorway to the right. The rest of the school must already be here, but Professor McGonagall showed the first years into a small, empty chamber off the hall. They crowded in, standing rather closer together than they would usually have done, peering about nervously. "Welcome to Hogwarts," said Professor McGonagall. "The start of term banquet will begin shortly, but before you take your seats in the Great Hall, you will be sorted into your houses. The sorting is a very important ceremony because, while you are here, your house will be something like your family within Hogwarts. You will have class with the rest of your house, sleep in your house dormitory, and spend free time in your house common room. The 4 houses are called Gryffindor, Hufflepuff, Ravenclaw, and Slytherin. Each house has its own noble history, and each has produced outstanding witches and wizards. While you are at Hogwarts, your triumphs will earn your house points, while any rule breaking will lose house points. At the end of the year, the house with the most points is awarded the House Cup, a great honor. I hope each of you will be a credit to whichever house becomes yours. The sorting ceremony will take place in a few minutes in front of the rest of the school. I suggest you all smarten yourselves up as much as you can while you are waiting." Her eyes lingered for a moment on Neville's cloak, which was fastened under his left ear, and on Ron's smudged nose. "I shall return when we are ready for you," said Professor McGonagall. "Please wait quietly." Naruto was waiting patiently for McGonagall to come back when he heard several people scream behind him. He looked around, only to see about 20 ghosts that just streamed through the back wall. Pearly white and slightly transparent, they glided across the room talking to one another and hardly glancing at the first years. They seemed to be arguing. What looked like a fat little monk was saying, "Forgive and forget, I say, we ought to give him a second chance. My dear Friar, haven't we given Peeves all the chances he deserves? He gives us all a bad name and you know, he's not really even a ghost. I say, what are you all doing here?" The ghost wearing a ruff and tights had suddenly noticed the first years. Nobody answered. "New students," said the fat friar, smiling around at them. "About to be sorted, I suppose." A few people nodded mutely. "Hope to see you in Hufflepuff," said Friar. "My old house, you know." "Yeah, right, Hufflepuff. Salazar would be laughing at me from his grave if I was to be sorted into Hufflepuff." "Move along now," said a sharp voice. "The sorting ceremony's about to start." Professor McGonagall had returned. One by one, the ghosts floated away through the opposite wall. "Now, form a line," Professor McGonagall told the first years, "and follow me." Naruto got into line, and they walked out of the chamber, back across the hall, and through a pair of double doors into the Great Hall. When they entered the hall, the sight which greeted them amazed even Naruto. Hall was lit by thousands and thousands of candles that were floating in midair over 4 long tables, where the rest of the students were sitting. These tables were laid with glittering golden plates and goblets. At the top of the hall was another long table where the teachers were sitting. Professor McGonagall led the first years up here so that they came to a halt in a line facing the other students, with the teachers behind them. The hundreds of faces staring at them looked like pale lanterns in the flickering candlelight. Dotted here and there among the students, the ghosts shone misty silver. Naruto looked up and saw a velvety black ceiling dotted with stars. He heard Hermione whisper, "It's bewitched to look like the sky outside. I read about it in Hogwarts, a history." It was hard to believe there was a ceiling there at all, and that the Great Hall didn't simply open onto the heavens. He wondered if he could make something like this, using seals. When he looked back at Professor McGonagall, she was silently placing a 4-legged stool in front of the first years. On top of the stool she put a pointed wizard's hat. "So that sorting hat, huh?" thought Naruto. For a few seconds, there was complete silence. Then the hat twitched. A rip near the brim opened wide like and the hat began to sing. "Oh, you may not think I'm pretty. But don't judge on what you see. I'll eat myself if you can find a smarter hat than me. You can keep your bowlers black. Your top hat sleek and tall. For I'm the Hogwarts sorting hat. And I can cap them all. There's nothing hidden in your head. The sorting hat can't see. So try me on and I will tell you where you ought to be." You might belong in Gryffindor. Where dwell the brave at heart. Their daring, nerve, and chivalry set Gryffindors apart. You might belong in Hufflepuff. Where they are just and loyal. Those patient Hufflepuffs are true. And unafraid of toil. Or yet in wise old Ravenclaw, if you've a ready mind. Where those of wit and learning will always find their kind. Or perhaps in Slytherin. You'll make your real friends. Those cunning folk use any means to achieve their ends. So put me on. Don't be afraid. And don't get in a flap. You're in safe hands, though I have none. For I'm a thinking cap. The whole hall burst into applause as the hat finished its song. It bowed to each of the 4 tables and then became quite still again. As for Naruto, well, he thought that it was the stupidest shit he had ever heard. Professor McGonagall now stepped forward holding a long roll of parchment. When I call your name, you will put on the hat and sit on the stool to be sorted, she said. Abbott, Hannah. The pink-faced girl with blonde pigtails stumbled out of line, put on the hat, which fell right down over her eyes, and sat down. A moment's pause. Hufflepuff. Shouted the hat. The table on the right cheered and clapped as Hannah went to sit down at the Hufflepuff table. Harry saw the ghost of the fat friar waving merrily at her. Bones, Susan. Hufflepuff. Shouted the hat again, and Susan scuttled off to sit next to Hannah. Boot, Terry. Ravenclaw. The table's second from the left clapped this time. Several Ravenclaws stood up to shake hands with Terry as he joined them. Brocklehurst, Mandy went to Ravenclaw too, but Brown, Lavender became the first new Gryffindor, and the table on the far left exploded with cheers. Bulstrode, Millicent then became a Slytherin. Finch Fletchley, Justin. Hufflepuff. Finnegan, Seamus, the sandy-haired boy sat on the stool for almost a whole minute before the hat declared him a Gryffindor. Granger, Hermione. Hermione almost ran to the stool and jammed the hat eagerly on her head. Gryffindor. Shouted the hat. He could hear Ron groaning, which caused him to snicker quietly. When Neville Longbottom, the boy who kept losing his toad, was called, he fell over on his way to the stool. The hat took a long time to decide with Neville. When it finally shouted, Gryffindor, Neville ran off still wearing it and had to jog back amid gales of laughter to give it to McDougal, Morag. Malfoy, Draco the hat had barely touched his head when it screamed, Slytherin. Malfoy went to join his friends Crabbe and Goyle, looking pleased with himself. There weren't many people left now. Moon not Parkinson, then a pair of twin girls, Paddle and Paddle, then Perks, Sally Ann, and then Otter, Harry. As Harry stepped forward, whispers suddenly broke out like little hissing fires all over the hall. Otter, did she say? The Harry Potter? Naruto couldn't understand what was the big deal about Harry Potter. Didn't these wizards use logic at all? Uchiha strongly suspected that the so-called defeat of Voldemort was caused by Harry's parents, but he just settled to watch Harry as he was being sorted. And finally, after several long minutes, he yelled out Gryffindor. He watched as the whole Gryffindor table cheered for him and smirked. If I play my cards right, I might get some use out of you, Harry. Naruto's focus went back to the sorting ceremony when he noticed that there were only 4 people, including himself, left to be sorted. Thomas Dean, a black boy even taller than Ron, joined Harry at the Gryffindor table. Turpin, Lisa, became a Ravenclaw. And then it was his turn. Uchiha, Naruto. He walked up and sat on the stool. Just like with Malfoy, that barely touched his hair when it yelled out. Slytherin. Naruto got up, smirking, and went to the Slytherin table and sat between Malfoy and some girl with blonde hair and blue eyes, with Malfoy on right and girl on the left side. He barely paid any attention to Ron, who was sorted into Gryffindor. Though he did pay attention to the boy by the name of Blaise Zabini, who was sorted into the House of Slytherin. He turned to his left and greeted a blonde girl. Hi there, name's Naruto. Daphne Greenger, pleased to meet you. Said a smiling blonde. Likewise, replied Naruto, flashing her one of his charming smiles, making her cheek slightly pink. He noticed that auburn-haired girl with green eyes, who sat next to Daphne, nudged her in the ribs and coughed. Oh yes, this is my friend Tracy Davis. Said Daphne. Hi, it's nice to meet you, Naruto. Said a grinning Tracy as she extended her arm to shake him. Naruto, being the sneaky shinobi he was, quickly took her hand into his, and I can say the same about you, Tracy. This of course caused the poor girl to imitate a tomato. He looked at the teacher's table and noticed that Albus Dumbledore had gotten to his feet. Welcome, he said. Welcome to a new year at Hogwarts. Before we begin our banquet, I would like to say a few words. And here they are. Nitwit. Blubber. Oddment. Tweak. Thank you. He sat back down. Everybody clapped and cheered. Yep, the old man is definitely off his rockers. He looked back at his dishes, only to see that they were now piled with food. Not bad. He commented. He was about to dig in when somebody interrupted him. You, Uchiha. He turned to his right to see smug-looking Malfoy. "Yes. Can I help you? You were the one to yell at me on the train. I would seriously consider apologizing, after all, what is some simple unknown name compared to Malfoy? You would do well to remember that." Now this seriously ticked him off. He was originally planning on just ignoring this brat, but after insulting Uchiha's name. Oh no, he was going to get it. "You know, Malfoy. It's considered polite to pray before eating," said Naruto, bowing his head a little, pretending to pray. Malfoy on the other hand, didn't even move a muscle. "Oh? You seem to have forgotten how to pray. Let me help you," he said, grabbed the back of Draco's head and slammed it into the table, causing Malfoy to black out. "Oh you poor thing, you must have been so exhausted to fall asleep like that. Wouldn't you say so, girls?" He turned to his left to see both girls staring at him with widened eyes and their ass open. "Huh? Oh yes, definitely," said Tracy. Daphne on the other hand just nodded. After several minutes of eating various things and consuming dessert, everything disappeared and Professor Dumbledore got to his feet again. The hall fell silent. "Ahem, just a few more words now that we are all fed and watered. I have a few start of term notices to give you. First years should note that the forest on the grounds is forbidden to all pupils. And a few of our older students would do well to remember that as well." Dumbledore's twinkling eyes flashed in the direction of the Weasley twins. "I have also been asked by Mr. Filch, the caretaker, to remind you all that no magic should be used between class in the corridors. Quidditch trials will be held in the second week of the term. Anyone interested in playing for their house teams should contact Madam Hooch. And finally, I must tell you that this year, the third floor corridor on the right-hand side is out of bounds to everyone who does not wish to die a very painful death." I'm not sure if I should be excited or questioning his sanity. "And now, before we go to bed, let us sing the school song," cried Dumbledore. Dumbledore gave his wand a little flick, as if he was trying to get a fly off the end, and a long golden ribbon flew out of it, which rose high above the tables and twisted itself, snake-like, into words. "No way in hell I'm gonna sing that shit." "Everyone picks their favorite tune," said Dumbledore, and off we go. And the school bellowed. "Hogwarts, Hogwarts, Hoggy-Warty Hogwarts. Teach us something please. Whether we be old and bald. Or young with scabby knees. Our heads could do with filling. With some interesting stuff. For now they're bare and full of air. Dead flies and bits of fluff. So teach us things worth knowing. Bring back what we forgot, just do your best, we'll do the rest. And learn until our brains all rot." Everybody finished the song at different times. At last, only the Weasley twins were left singing along to a very slow funeral march. "Ah, music," he said, wiping his eyes. "A magic beyond all we do here. And now, bedtime. Off you trot." They stood up and followed Slytherin prefect as he led them to what looked like cellars and stopped in front of the wall. Crabbe and Goyle were dragging unconscious Malfoy by his arms. "Listen up, this is the entrance that leads to the Slytherin common room. You will not, under any circumstances, reveal it to anybody from other houses, nor share our word with them." "Pure blood," said the prefect, revealing a page leading to the common room. It was a low-ceilinged, dungeon-like room with greenish lamps and chairs. The common room had lots of low-backed black and dark green leather sofas with awns, skulls, and dark wood cupboards. It had quite a grand atmosphere, but also quite a cold one. "Word to the common room changes every fortnight and it is posted on the notice board," announced prefect. He then showed which way was boys' and girls' dormitory rooms. Naruto bid a goodnight to his two new friends and made his way to the boys' dormitory. When he entered, he could see walls decorated with Slytherin crests and silver lanterns hung from the ceiling. There were many ancient four-posters with green silk hanging. He eagerly hopped onto the bed and pulled its hangings shut. "Ah, this is pretty comfortable. Still, it's not as bad as I thought it would be. I still have a whole year here, so I better make it exciting. But now it's time to sleep. Ugh, I only just noticed how tired I am," thought Naruto as he yawned and pulled bed sheets over his body. He fell asleep immediately, dreaming about orgies with schoolgirls. When Naruto woke up the next morning, it was around 5 in the morning. He quickly made his way out of his bed and got dressed in Hogwarts uniform, even though he didn't like it. When he exited Slytherin common room, he made several shadow clones and sent them to explore the castle in case the map that of Hogwarts, that Aylor kindly left in his journal, needed any adjustments. After seeing his clones scatter in random directions, he headed outside to get his usual morning exercises done. He found a good spot at the shore of the Black Lake, away from unnecessary spectators. By the time he finished working out, practicing his fighting styles and several, it was already 7 in the morning. When raven-haired Uchiha returned into the castle, he decided to take a relaxing bath to have some peace and quiet before his busy day starts. After his relaxing bath, when he was neat and clean, he headed toward the Great Hall to get his breakfast. When he finally arrived at the Great Hall, it was already 8 in the morning and almost everybody was there. Naruto made his way toward the Slytherin table, not paying much attention to anybody in the Great Hall. When he was near his house's table, he spotted 2 girls that he introduced himself to, Daphne Green and Tracy Davis, sitting there in the middle of the crowd Slytherin students. They spotted him when he started heading their way and they waved at him, making him wave back in return and smile at them. Daphne and Tracy moved to their sides and gestured to Naruto to sit between them. He obliged without any questions. "Good morning Daphne, Tracy, how are you this morning?" asked Uchiha as he sat down and helped himself to some salad and potatoes. "I'm feeling very excited. I can't wait to start learning some magic. And what about you, Naruto?" asked Daphne. But before Naruto was even able to let out a single sound, Tracy started talking. "I'm in the same mood as Daphne. I really want to learn how to do magic. I mean, my dad showed me some spells and stuff, but he never taught me anything serious and said that I needed to learn it at school." Tracy started rambling. All this time, Naruto just watched in amusement as the auburn-haired girl started telling him about how excited she was. And after several more minutes of the girl's rambling, she quieted down and, Naruto noted, she started looking nervous, fidgeting in her seat a little and playing with her dot. "And I'm also a little bit nervous," said Tracy almost in whisper and looking around. "Any reason why?" asked Naruto. The emerald-eyed girl looked around one more time and then leaned closer to Naruto. "It's well nobody knows except Daphne and she only found out because we're childhood friends, but I think I can trust you," whispered Tracy, smiling slightly despite her nervous state. "Don't worry, you can trust me," smiled Naruto warmly in return. "Stupid girl, I'm the last person you should trust." "Okay, well, here goes." She took a deep breath and whispered into his ear. "I am half-blood." As soon as those words left her, there was audible gasp from Naruto, who looked at her as if she was some sort of criminal. Uchiha pointed a shaking at her, as if in shock. "You." By this point, Tracy looked almost in tears. "So what of it?" he deadpanned, causing Tracy pause. Confusion was written all over her face, tears long forgotten. Seeing that look on her face, Naruto burst out laughing. Sorry, couldn't help it," he managed to say between his laughter. After a minute of laughing, he calmed down a little and was now chuckling quietly. "What's so funny?" asked Tracy with a huff and puffed out her cheeks, which were slightly red. This unfortunately caused Naruto to laugh once again. I'm really sorry for laughing, you just look so cute and adorable when you make that face," was Uchiha's answer. It took Tracy several seconds to process what he said, and when she finally did, her face became so red, Naruto thought she was going to explode. Out of the corner of his eye, a raven-haired shinobi saw Daphne giggling quietly at the scene that was playing out before her. Thank you," she managed to stutter out, not sure what else to say. "You're welcome," he told Tracy and grinned. "And as for your earlier question, Daphne, I am feeling pretty good, thank you," said Uchiha as he turned toward a blonde girl sitting on his left. "And Tracy, you really shouldn't put that much trust into the person who you met only once, and especially if said person is from Slytherin. After all, there are some fellas who would sell their own mother just to get what they want. Myself included," he mentally added. "Even though I don't really care about that blood purity stuff, some others might, so be more careful, okay?" Naruto whispered into Tracy's ear and then winked at her. Tracy, who was pretty flustered by this point, either from emberment or from close proximity, he didn't really care, just nodded. Before he could even open his, he felt Daphne's hand on his own, which was under the table. He turned to his left and looked at her with a questioning gaze. Daphne leaned closer to him and quietly whispered, so only he could hear. "Thank you for that, it really took her a lot of courage to tell anybody about it, besides me." She gave his hand a squeeze and withdrew her own back to her lap. "No problem," smirked Naruto. "So what do we have first on our schedule today?" asked blue-eyed Uchiha when he finished his breakfast. "Potions," was Daphne's short answer. He looked at Tracy and then at Daphne. Seeing that they both finished their breakfast as well, he stood up, gesturing for them to follow. "Let's get going then, it wouldn't hurt to be a few minutes earlier," he told them as they made their way out of the Great Hall. Following days flew by pretty quickly. Naruto, as he suspected, was by far the best student in his year. He was always the one to finish a given assignment first, most of which he got on his first try, and answer any questions that teachers asked. After all, it just wouldn't do if Uchiha was not the best. There were several classes that Naruto found useful. They were potions, transfiguration, charms and defense against dark arts. Potions were pretty easy and Naruto took a liking to it. He also found out that the head of the Slytherin house, Severus Snape, or Professor Snape as students called him, clearly favored members of his own house. He took points from other houses and awarded his house with points every chance he got. And by the look of it, Naruto was one of his most favorite students, even if he didn't show it. His second favorite subject was Transfiguration, which was taught by Professor McGonagall, a woman who led them to the Great Hall on their first day. On their first lesson on Transfiguration, McGonagall gave them a little speech. Transfiguration is some of the most complex and dangerous magic you will learn at Hogwarts. Anyone messing around in my CL will leave and not come back. You have been warned, she said. Then she changed her desk into a pig and back again. Many students thought that it would be what they were about to do. Those students were in for one big disappointment. She told them that it was too soon for them to start learning this stuff. Naruto didn't argue. He didn't really have any reason to, he could just practice more advanced stuff on his own. She then gave them a match and told them to turn it into a needle. By the end of the lesson, only several students expected him to make any progress. They managed to turn their matches silver, and some even managed to make it pointy. He himself didn't really care much about what others did. He turned his match into a needle on his first try and leaned back into his chair to relax. Professor McGonagall was impressed if the look on her face after she saw him do it on his first try indicated anything. Hell, she even awarded him with 10 points. Next there was Charms CL. Charms were being taught by a tiny man by the name Phileas Flitwick, or, as students referred to him, Professor Flitwick. They didn't do much at first, only theory about charms and such. Though he showed them a spell in his last lesson. And then there was his least favorite CLD8DA. It wasn't that Naruto didn't like this particular subject, the problem was the professor, if you could call him that. At first, he had high expectations about Dada, but after actually attending one of the lessons, he was greatly disappointed. Quirinus Quirrell, the man who taught Dada, was a complete joke, stuttering like a fool and jumping after hearing some noise behind him. Naruto, at first thought that he was just an idiot who got this position by chance. But after spending several hours in his class, his trained eye picked up some moves that were clearly out of character for some random fool like Quirrell. And that was when he started keeping a closer eye on him. He followed him around for quite some time. Though at first there wasn't anything too unusual about him, he caught him walking around the halls at night and mumbling something to himself. One more thing that Naruto noticed was that when he was alone, he walked different. Usually when he is surrounded by students, he gives off the feeling of insecurity, nervousness and fear. But when he was alone, he was confident, so sure of himself. But what reason would a professor have to act like that? Maybe he was just hiding something and was afraid of getting caught, or maybe it was just an act and he had some secret identity. He couldn't be 100% sure, he needed to find out more about him to know what this man was playing at exactly. And there was also this one suspicious fact that Naruto found out about Quirrell. When he looked at him with his Sharingan active, he saw a large buildup of chakra at the back of a stuttering fool's head. It was as if there was something that was ing out his chakra and with it, his life force. Uchiha Naruto was never one to give up on something if he really wanted it, and at the moment, he really wanted to find out just what in the ing hell was Quirrell's deal. But suspicious professors aside, he had class to attend and things to do. And of course Naruto knew that there would be some useless class. A raven-haired shinobi, those class were astronomy, history of magic and herbology. He could think of several cases where knowledge, given by these subjects, would be mildly useful. Though in the end, he could think only of the situations in which only normal civilians would need it. But even if he thought that he needed those class like he needed a second, he still was the first student to finish a given task and answer all questions that were asked. There was also one more interesting thing that he learned on Friday. Professor Snape really did not like Harry Potter for some unknown reason. He would just put it in his find out later mental journal. It was already Sunday, and all in all, the first week in Hogwarts went pretty smoothly for young shinobi. He went to class, gained some points for his house, explored every corner in the castle, and made acquaintances with several people from different houses. But he mainly was seen in the company of Daphne Green and Tracy Davis. Also, he tried to avoid Draco Malfoy as much as possible, little brat was getting on his nerves every day. And now, after one whole week of being in Hogwarts, he decided that he would finally visit the famed Chamber of Secrets. After several minutes of walking from dungeons toward the second floor, he was standing in front of the girls' lavatory, which was dubbed as Myrtle's bathroom. He really hoped that the annoying ghost was sulking somewhere else. He mildly wondered why on earth would an old bastard build an entrance to his secret chamber in a place like this. But after several more seconds of thinking about it, he shook his head. What does it matter where the entrance is? I should be thinking about the huge basilisk down there. It seemed that Lady Luck was on his side this time because there was no trace of a mopping ghost. He came closer to the sink and hissed. Open. And at once the tap glowed with a brilliant white light and began to spin. Next second, the sink began to move. The sink, in fact, sank right out of sight, leaving a large pipe exposed, a pipe wide enough for a man to slide into. Trust that old bastard to make an amusement park out of his chamber, thought Naruto as he looked at a wide pipe. He looked at it for several more seconds and sighed. Better get this over with. Next second, Naruto jumped into the pipe and let himself slide down. After about a minute of sliding down the pipe at high speed, he finally flew out of the pipe and landed on his feet. Surface, on which Naruto was now standing, was a damp floor of a dark stone tunnel large enough to stand in. And he just now noticed that his clothes were covered in slime. Well shit, now I have to clean it up. Just great. He looked around the tunnel he was in, and he came to a quick and simple conclusion. It's dark as Lumo, said Naruto, and outstretched his hand, his open palm facing upward. And the next second, a glowing orb of light appeared in the palm of his hand. He made his way through the dark tunnel, and the only noise he made was the slapping sound of his feet hitting the wet floor. As he walked in, he felt himself step on something and hear some kind of a crunching sound. He lowered his hand to the floor and crouched down to the balls of his feet. Floor under his feet was littered with small animal bones, and it seems that he stepped on one of them. Now that's nasty. Oh well, I will send some clones later to clean this shit up. Can't have my new secret place be a dump. Making a mental note for later, Naruto kept moving forward but stopped once again upon noticing something big up ahead. He activated his Sharingan and moved closer to it. Upon closer look, he could see that it was a snakeskin that Basilisk most probably shed. It was poisonous green in color and was lying curled across the tunnel. Yep, he sure wasn't lying when he wrote that there is a huge basilisk down here, thought Uchiha as he eyed shedded snakeskin that was at least 20 feet long. After several more minutes of examining snakeskin, he moved forward once again, and thankfully there wasn't anything in his way now. God damn it. How many stupid turns does this tunnel have anyway, thought Naruto in frustration as he made yet another turn. And after several more minutes of walking through the dark and curvy tunnel, he reached a solid wall. Haha. You, tunnel. You thought that you could bore me to death, huh? Fat chance, bitch. Nothing can stop the great Uchiha Naruto-sama. Bwahaha. When the slightly insane shinobi got his thoughts under control, he got a good look at the wall that was in front of him. Said wall had two entwined serpents carved on it, their eyes set with great glinting emerald. PCH, crazy, ancient had a bad addiction to the color green. But who am I to talk, I got an even worse addiction to the color black and a slightly smaller addiction to green. Open up, hissed Uchiha. The serpents parted as the wall cracked open, the halves slid smoothly out of sight, and Naruto walked, his excitement rising by the second. He was standing at the end of a long, dimly lit chamber. Towering stone pillars entwined with more serpents rose to a ceiling lost in darkness, casting long, black shadows through the odd greenish gloom that filled the place. Then, as he drew level with the last pair of pillars, a statue high as the chamber itself loomed into view, standing against the back wall. It was the face of Salazar Slytherin. Oh come on, I'm changing that thing into something else ASAP. Probably to something more welcoming, like my face. Yep, my own face will do nicely instead of that old bastard's. Now what was it that you needed to say here? Oh yeah. Now I remember. Speak to me, Slytherin, greatest of the Hogwarts four. Hissed Naruto, looking at the statue. Slytherin's gigantic stone face was moving. Naruto saw Salazar's opening, wider and wider, to make a huge black dot. And something was stirring the statue's dot, something was slithering up from its depths. Basilisk thought to Naruto and closed his eyes. But there. Hissed King of Serpents as it came out of the statues and dropped on the cold, wet floor. My name is Naruto Uchiha, descendant of Salazar Slytherin, and heir of the noble and most ancient house of Slytherin. Blue-eyed Uchiha hissed back. Basilisk looked at Naruto with a calculating gaze, and even though he couldn't see it, he could clearly feel it. After several moments of complete silence, Basilisk finally started hissing. If you are who you claim to be, then open your eyes and look into mine. If you are indeed a Slytherin, then my gaze will not affect you, Master Salazar made sure of that, but if you are not, then you will die. Better not activate my Sharingan, who knows what will happen. Note for later. Experiment with Sharingan and Basilisk. He hesitantly opened his eyes and into Basilisk's yellow orbs. Several seconds passed as young Uchiha and the King of Serpents looked into each other's eyes. Finally, after several more seconds of staring, Basilisk bowed its head. Young master, it hissed. Just Naruto, or Master Naruto if you can't help it. Now, what is your name? Asked Naruto. Greenella, Master Naruto. Answered a green-colored serpent. Naruto just mumbled something incoherent about old bastards addicted to the color green. He suddenly paused and looked at Greenella's head. Look at me. He commanded harshly. When he looked into her eyes, he could see that they were bloodshot red and her face was all wet from sweat and tears. Yes, we are complete strangers, but at least you enjoyed it, didn't you? He asked, smirking. This, apparently, was the wrong thing to say, because now she looked even more ashamed. He sighed. Look, I am no good with crying women, and you're not helping here, so try to listen to what I have to say, okay? She gave a hesitant nod. Good. He gave her a quick peck on it, which she didn't have time to return or turn away from. Seeing that he finally got her attention, he began to speak. As I said before, we are complete strangers, and we enjoyed the we had a couple of minutes ago, so what can we do about it? But before she could even open her, he already gave her an answer to his own question. First thing we must do is get to know each other, so we won't be complete strangers, so how does that sound? Sound okay? She answered after several seconds, albeit a little hesitantly. I'll go first then, so you would know what to do. He said and started introducing himself without waiting for a reply. My name is Naruto Uchiha. I was born in Japan, but moved here with my dad due to him getting a job here. I like fighting, guns and fast cars. I do not like weak and annoying people. My hobbies are shooting, driving at really high speed, and being the best at everything I want. And my goals for the future haven't thought about it yet. He finished with a humorous grin on his face. Your turn now. He said, gesturing for her to start. Wait. Naruto Uchiha, I heard that name before. Weren't you one of the first years that were sorted a week ago? I remember your name because I thought it sounds funny. Said the now purple-haired girl, looking thoughtful. Yeah, I'm one of the first years, so what? Ugh, not only did I lose my virginity to a stranger, I lost it to an 11-year-old kid. She groaned. To a kid whose dick is still you. And for your information, I'm gonna be 12 in 1 month. He replied. She looked down, her eyes widened, and her face and hair turned into a very dark shade of red. She probably didn't even realize it until I pointed it out. Thought Naruto, as he gouged her reaction. She tried to pull back, but Naruto held her in place by her hips. And for sake, do I look like a kid to you? He asked with a raised eyebrow. She stopped struggling beneath him and looked at him up and down, as if seeing him for the first time. Now that I got a good look at him, I have to admit, he's pretty handsome. She thought to herself, but didn't actually say it. Well, no, but what? But people will she didn't get to finish what she wanted to say, due to Naruto crashing on hers. This time, she started responding after several seconds of hesitation. People don't have to know. He said when he pulled away from her, minute after he started her. She gave him a nod, but spotted a mischievous grin on his face. Second later she slapped her on the dot. Ouch. What was that for? She asked and playfully hit him on with the back of her hand. For getting sidetracked. And don't tell me that you didn't enjoy it. She didn't answer, instead choosing to turn her head to the side, not daring to look him in the eyes. Seeing this made Naruto grin even wider. Now get on with your introduction. You know about me much more than I know about you, Ms. I like to get Ed. He told her with a wink. If it was possible, her face became even redder, though she managed to get it under control a minute later. My name is Nymphadora Tonks, but don't call me by my first name, I would prefer if you called me just Tonks. Why would you want that? Nymphadora is a beautiful name, a bit full if anything. Well, I don't like it. People always make fun of me because of it. Tonks replied with a huff. I don't make fun of you, do I? As I said, I think it's a very beautiful name. You were serious. Of course I was, why would I lie to you after just meeting you? Actually I can think of hundreds of reasons why I would, but she doesn't need to know that. And again, as I said, it's a bit full, so I will have to call you something shorter. Nim or Nimmy. Yep, that sounds nice. Oh, don't give me that look, you know you like it. He said, spotting a look of irritation on her face. But even though she acted irritated, she was smiling. Then I'm just going to call you Naru, just Nar. She smirked, which caused him to laugh loudly. What's so funny? Wondering what could make him laugh so hard all of a sudden. It's just that we already had cuddled and now we are giving each other pet names. All we need to do now is to go on a date and we will be, what people consider, a couple. Newly dubbed Nimmy blushed and started giggling, though she was interrupted by the sound of smacking. Why did you meet this time? For getting sidetracked, again. But I wasn't the one who. Smack. And speaking about that delicious of yours, you better get on with your introduction before we decide to have a round 3. After all I learned about you is your name and that you do not like to be called by your first name. Well, let's see, as you probably already guessed, I am a metamorphomagus. She started and was about to continue when Naruto interrupted her with a question. Metamorphomagus? What is that, some kind of a fetish? Which caused Tonks to break out in uncontrollable laughter. No, silly, metamorphmagi are witches or wizards with the ability to change his or her physical appearances at will. Also, people are born with that ability and not made, that's why they are extremely rare. And that's also why my hair keeps changing color, it's because my abilities are affected by my emotions. She explained. Ah, so that's why it kept happening earlier, I see. We will talk more about that particular subject later, okay? She just nodded, but her expression turned into a worried one a second later. You do not have any problems with it, do you? She asked. Naruto, seeing her worried state, reassured her that he was fine with her ability. It's just something I find very interesting. When you find out more about my lifestyle, you will understand why I want to know so much about your ability to change your appearance. He told her and gave her a peck on the, causing her to smile at him, sentiment which he returned. Or perhaps he was just good at acting, who knows. Now, please, continue. Said Uchiha, but before she could even open her, he abruptly cut her off, his mischievous grin growing on his face. Or no, wait. Before you start, add Nymphadora tonks to my likes and ing Nymphadora tonks to my hobbies. She sent him a playful glare and smacked his shoulder. Stop being a pervert. She told him, momentarily forgetting about the situation she was in. Pervert. You're one to talk, sitting on my lap, completely, looking all why and delicious. He retorted. Metamorphmagus looked down at herself and saw that indeed she was. Oh yeah, you're right. She said it as if she just realized that particular fact. Or no, I am not. She added quickly. Also for a moment she wondered just when exactly did he manage to take off her shirt and skirt without her noticing. Black-haired shinobi only raised an eyebrow at her, asking her a silent question. I still have my shoes and socks on. She happily answered. He looked down at her feet and then back at her. He gave a soft ah in acknowledgement. Hey, why are you not? She looked at him, only now noticing that he still had half of his uniform on. Naruto just shrugged. I forgot to take it off. Mind helping me in getting rid of it? Her answer was a wide grin, and that followed it. He raised his hands, and she lifted his jumper over his head and threw it into the pile of clothes that formed near the desk that they used earlier. Not wasting any time, Tonks proceeded to unon his shirt, revealing his barren torso. Uchiha helped her take off his shirt after it was fully unwound and threw it in the same pile that the jumper was thrown into. You look even more handsome when you're. Thanks, you're quite beautiful yourself. He shot her an amused look and slapped her again. She yelped, not expecting it. I just loving you. Will you ever stop doing that already? My eyes all red. You and I both know that you like it and it turns you on, so I'm not going to stop. I will this little of yours as much as I want. She mumbled. Naruto just smirked and put his next to her ear. We will do that later, he whispered to her. She instantly went tomato red in color. Now get on with your damned introduction or we will stay as strangers for all eternity at this pace. Okay, sheesh. She paused for a moment, looking thoughtful. Naru. What was I supposed to say, again? Naruto stared at her for a minute before facepalming hard. What? Oh come on, anybody would forget after all that mind-blowing we had. You call that mind-blowing? Nim, let me explain something to you. There are several levels of how good can be. Those levels are horrible, not bad, good, amazing and finally mind-blowing. What we had was merely good, though it was pretty close to amazing. And believe me, if I really tried to give you mind-blowing, you wouldn't be conscious right now. Uchiha explains to his new lover. Tonk raised her eyebrow at him and looked at him curiously. How much did you have before? She asked. This is my first time. Came his instant reply. Then how come you know so much about it? She retorted with another question. I read a lot. And I know my limits. It also helps that I have memories of several full-grown men. She looked at him suspiciously for several seconds, but nodded nonetheless. Now, what you gotta tell me are your likes, dislikes, hobbies and goals for the future. She nodded again, in acknowledgement. I like playing around with my metamorphic abilities, making friends, and helping people. I also love my parents, even if my full man, who goes by the name Naruto. She wiggled her eyebrows at the end, making Uchiha chuckle in her. Well, as you see, or feel, I am already hard again. And I don't really fancy waiting 15 whole minutes till our date starts, so I came up with a brilliant idea. He told her, as slid down the corridor, still carrying his dark-eyed lover. Oh? And what would that idea be? She asked, trying hard not to as he was walking. We will have while walking to the prefect's bathroom. He answered her in a tone that people used to talk about the weather. So what do you think? He whispered into her ear. We are having while walking through the corridor in Hogwarts, we could get caught. It is the craziest thing in the world, somebody would have done it and you ask what I think. She almost shouted at him. I absolutely love it. She whispered in a husky voice, second later, and gave his peonate, which lasted for several minutes. Don't worry too much about getting caught, all we need to do is reach the other end of this corridor, which is a secret passageway to the 5th floor. How are you about it? She asked, slightly panting. It took her a lot of effort not to out loud. It's a secret. He whispered back, grinning mischievously from ear to ear. I will say this though. I know about every secret page in this castle. She only gave him a nod, her eyes slightly wide. When they almost reached their destination at the end of the corridor, a short, which was muffled by Naruto's, escaped her. You know, even if I said that you don't need to worry too much about getting caught, it would do us good to keep quiet. Who knows when that crazy old fool Filch will show up. And even worse, if one of the paintings spots us. He warned her. What's so bad about some painting spotting us? She asked when he stopped, reached out for a torch that was slightly above her head, grabbed it, and started muttering something under his breath that Tonks didn't quite catch. Every painting in this castle reports everything it sees, directly to Dumbledore, that's what. He answered her, making a short hissing sound. And moments later, a diagonal slit appeared on the wall behind Nymphadora's back, and it opened like a common double door, revealing a dark page. Well, here we go. He said and stepped, along with Tonks, who was moving her hips up and down against his own. Mere seconds after they were, the parted wall was back in its original place, not leaving a trace of somebody being there. By the time they reached the prefect's bathroom, Tonks already came twice and was on her way to a third climax, while Naruto came only once. He guessed it was because of an adrenaline rush that she was so sensitive. They exited the bathroom several hours later when it was about 3 in the morning. And judging by the huge toothy grin on Nim's face, their date went quite well. He decided to walk with her till they reached Hufflepuff common room entry, but Tonks insisted that he walk her only to the kitchen. I am really sorry, but non-Hufflepuffs aren't allowed to know how to get into our common room. She told him with an apologetic smile. Nah, don't worry about it, it's cool. He shrugged off her attempt to apologize. Great, then I'll see you tomorrow Naru. She told him, visibly excited to spend more time with him, and gave him a hug. Yeah, good night Nim. Returning the gesture, and her good night, for which she had to lower down her head a little, seeing as she was taller than him by a few inches. They parted 2 minutes later and headed for their respective common rooms. And as he walked down the dungeons, he couldn't help but think about how much of a fool he was to say that this week went smoothly. No. This week didn't just go, it was ing pun intended, awesome. Was his final thought before he entered the Slytherin common room. Totally confused Naruto, pointing at himself. Yes, you how dare you? Crucio. Yelled out Snape and watched as the young man in front of him rolled on the floor in agony. He laughed madly as the light left the boy's eyes. After several more minutes of insane laughter, he managed to take control of his emotions. Snape turned around and walked out of the room, his flowing black robes gliding through the air behind him. Nobody steals my lines, he whispered into the thin air. Naruto's second week in Hogwarts was going pretty damn good, if he had to say so himself. He had the best grades in his year, every professor liked him and thought of him as a young prodigy and brought him up as an example for other students to follow. And he had a feeling that he was slowly becoming Professor Snape's most favorite student. And to top it all, he had a hot girlfriend whose mother, he was starting to suspect, named her as she did for a reason. Maybe it runs in the family to randomly become horny multiple times per day. He thought to himself several times. It was Thursday and Naruto was a little excited for today, seeing as they had their first flying lesson this afternoon. He never really tried flying on a broom before and he wondered on occasions how it would feel to fly on a broom, plus, he would be getting some physical exercise. Not that he didn't get enough, mind you. He still did his morning workouts and as far as he was concerned, moving his hips back and forward for several hours was a pretty good workout. He also visited Ella a couple of times to play tag or race her. Old Basilisk was overjoyed when she heard that he was ready to spend time with her, as he promised her. It's not exactly entertaining to sit in a hole for God knows how long, and now, thanks to you, I will have an opportunity to stretch a little. She told him. He just shrugged off her multiple thank you, Master Naruto, and told her that he didn't really have anything better to do, so he just decided to spend time with her, but also added that he would try to come more often. He wouldn't admit it out loud, but he got attached to Ella. It's probably because she's a serpent and not a human. After all, your pet would not betray you for money or women. He reasoned. But back to flying lessons, it was around 3:30 in the afternoon and Slytherin first years were standing outside, near 20 broomsticks, waiting for Gryffindors and their teacher. Seeing as neither was coming anytime soon, Naruto decided to meditate. He flopped down on a dry surface of the Hogwarts grounds. He settled in the lotus position and closed his eyes. He wouldn't even think of meditating in a situation like this, but Kikbi was starting to act up and if he didn't subdue it with Sharingan every couple of hours, it would be a pain in the to do so tonight. His classmates and friends looked at him strangely, but didn't comment on it, though he faintly heard Malfoy snicker and say something along the lines of "Look at that idiot, falling asleep like that." By the end of this day, Draco will be in the hospital for sure, decided Naruto. 15 minutes later, Gryffindors arrived, and 5 more minutes later, their teacher showed up. Uchiha opened his eyes and stood up to look at his professor. It was Madame Hooch, if he remembered right. She had short gray hair and yellow eyes like a hawk. "Well, what are you all waiting for? Everyone stands with broomsticks. Come on, hurry up," she barked. Naruto did as he was told, though he didn't really trust this old broomstick, which looked like it would break in two if a toddler stepped on it. Oh well, worst case scenario, it will just break in midair. He idly thought to himself. "Stick your right hand over your broom and say up," called out Madame Hooch, and stood at the front. "Up." He heard everybody shout. He silently shook his head at his fellow first years. Why do they need to be this loud? It's not like you'll get a better result if you say it louder than anybody else. "Up," commanded Naruto, with even tone. His broom flew in his open palm at once. Blue-eyed Shinobi looked around to see how everybody else was doing. Daphne's and Tracy's brooms were in their hands as well, but only a few others achieved the same result as them. After everybody managed to get their broomsticks off the ground, Madame Hooch showed them how to mount their brooms without sliding off the end and walked up and down the rows, correcting their grips. Naruto overheard her telling Malfoy that he'd been doing it wrong for years. Young Uchiha, like everybody else in Slytherin house, heard Draco gloating about how he was an excellent flyer and practiced frequently with a broom. "Dang idiot," thought Naruto as he watched their teacher show Malfoy the right way to mount brooms. "Now, when I blow my whistle, you kick off from the ground, hard," said Madame Hooch. "Keep your broom steady, rise a few feet and then come straight back down by leaning forward slightly. On my whistle 3-2. But before a whistle even touched her, somebody from Gryffindor's side kicked off the ground and rose into the air. Naruto turned his head to the right to get a better look at who it was. He could see a chubby kid with a nervous and scared expression, sweating like a pig in an oven. Yep, it was that weakling, Neville Longbottom. "I'm surrounded by idiots and weaklings," he sighed quietly. "Come back, boy," shouted Madame Hooch, but it seemingly fell on deaf ears to Longbottom. Poor Sap was rising high into the air, while his face became almost as wide as Zetsu's. When he was about 20 feet high above the ground, Naruto saw him gasp and slide sideways off the broom. Wham! With a thud and audible crack, Longbottom hit the ground while his broomstick was still rising higher into the air and started to drift lazily toward the Forbidden Forest and out of sight. Madame Hooch was bending over Neville, her face as wide as his. "Broken wrist. Come on, boy, it's all right, up you get," he heard her mutter. She turned to the rest of the CL. "None of you is to move while I take this boy to the hospital wing. You leave those brooms where they are or you'll be out of Hogwarts before you can say Quidditch. Come on, dear." Neville, his face soaked in tears, clutching his wrist, hobbled off with Madame Hooch, who had her arm around him. No sooner were they out of earshot than Malfoy burst into laughter. Did you see his face, the great lump? The other Slytherins joined in, though Naruto stayed quiet. After all, people do not go around laughing at useless trash, so why should he? "Shut up, Malfoy," snapped Parvati Paddle. "Oh, sticking up for Longbottom. Never thought you'd like fat little crybabies, Parvati," taunted Pansy Parkinson, a girl that Naruto saw several times at the Slytherin common room, hanging around Malfoy. "Look," said Malfoy, darting forward and snatching something out of the GR. "It's that stupid thing Longbottom's grand sent him." Yes, Naruto saw it when it arrived. That thing was called Remembrall. It was pretty useless in Naruto's opinion. "Did that here, Malfoy," Naruto heard Harry say quietly. "Oh, now that's interesting. Maybe something fun will come out of it after all. I think I'll leave it somewhere for Longbottom to find. How about a tree?" replied Malfoy. And judging by his body language, he was about to mount a broom. "Malfoy," Naruto finally said and stepped forward, causing everybody to stop and stare at him, including Draco. "We wouldn't want you to be seen causing a fight or flying on a broom when Madame Hooch clearly said that we shouldn't, now would we? After all, you could lose point for Slytherin. So give that useless thing to Potter and be done with it," continued Uchiha with friendly smile on his face. "I'll do whatever I want," was his arrogant answer. Naruto did not take that well. He started walking toward Malfoy, who still had his smirk plastered on his face. "You know, that fool, Longbottom, he knows that he is just a useless weakling and stays out of others' way unlike you," said Naruto, still slowly walking forward, his friendly smile changing into a sadistic one. Though only Malfoy, who was in front of him, could see it. "I am going to tell this only once. Know your place, weakling, and don't get into others' way." By this time, Naruto was about a meter away from, now nervous, Draco. Malfoy took a step back, allowing Crabbe and Goyle to shield him. Oh? Hiding behind others' backs. How brave of you, Mr. Malfoy, said Naruto, not stopping in his advance. When he was right in front of two bodyguards, Goyle attempted to grab him by his robe, but failed miserably. Naruto caught his hand, twisted it, and with strength nobody knew he possessed, threw him to the left, right into Crabbe, sending them flying several meters, knocking them both out. Malfoy, seeing that both of his bodyguards were tossed away like rag dolls, mounted his broom and flew up in the air, still holding Remembrall. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw Potter following him into the air with his own broom. "Well, I warned him not to cause trouble." He said loudly enough for everybody to hear. He outstretched his hand back, still following Malfoy with his eyes, causing the broom to fly right into his open palm. And with one quick motion of his arm, he threw his broom, like a spear, in Draco's direction, making it slam right into his gut. But before Naruto's broom knocked the wind out of him, he managed to throw Remembrall high into the air. Next moment, everybody was watching Malfoy, who was holding his stomach in pain. But before blonde Slytherin could even think of hitting a hard ground, he saw raven-haired Uchiha standing right beneath him, his left arm in L shape, and smiling like a loon. Next thing Malfoy knew, Naruto's biceps and shoulder hit him in an already hurting stomach, knocking him out. Satisfied, Naruto turned around to face the rest of the CL, his friendly smile back in its place. "And that's why only bad things come out of breaking rules," he said cheerfully, causing some first-years to laugh nervously and others to just stare at him in shock, wonder, amazement and even fear. He made his way back to the group of Slytherin students, where Daphne and Tracy were waiting for him, Malfoy still slung over his shoulder like a sack of potatoes. "Do you really care that much about house points?" whispered Daphne into his ear when nobody was listening. Naruto just looked at her like she was crazy. "What? Of course not. Who do you think I am? I just wanted a reason to with Malfoy. Ha 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 ha," he whispered back and then laughed loudly. "Harry Potter?" he heard somebody shout, recognizing it as Professor McGonagall's voice. He turned around to look at what was going on, only to see several Gryffindors arguing with Professor McGonagall, and several minutes later, Harry Potter following her into the castle, his head bowed down. "Oh well, not my problem," Naruto thought, leading other Slytherins into the castle and to take Malfoy into the hospital. After all, he still needed to maintain an image of a friendly and caring kid. "If I was still in Elemental Nations and somebody who knew me called me friendly and caring, I would outright laugh at them or kill them." And with that thought in mind, Naruto along with his two companions took off into the castle, followed by the rest of the first years. Later dinner time Great Hall equals. Naruto, as usual, was sitting between two of his female, Slytherin friends, making small talk. He wasn't paying much attention to the people around him, except few. And it so happens that one of those few people was Harry Potter, who was currently having a glare contest with Draco, who surprisingly enough was out of the hospital, and his two bodyguards, Crabbe and Goyle. "Should have hit that bitch harder. Though I doubt it would have made much difference, medical magic is pretty fast. Note to self. Learn medical magic later. Now what does he want from Potterham?" thought Naruto as he focused on Potter's and Malfoy's dot. Second, a big grin appeared on Naruto's face, as if he just won in a lottery. "Wizard's duel, eh? This could be a perfect chance to befriend Potter. Gotta work fast," thought Naruto, quickly making his way toward the Gryffindor table. He reached it just in time to hear Weasley saying, "I'm his second, who's yours?" Not wasting a second, he sneaked up behind Malfoy and put his hands on Draco's shoulders. "I'll be his second, won't I, Draco?" asked Uchiha, smiling friendly at the group. "That's sure, you can be my second," was Draco's nervous reply. "Great, I'll see you guys later," said Naruto and took off back to the Slytherin table. That night near midnight equals. "Don't go. I'm gonna miss you so bad," whispered Pudding Tonks, giving Naruto a couple of pecks on the dot. "Now, don't be like that. I promise that I will spend more time with you after I settle this thing with those brats." "Do you really mean it?" "Absolutely," answered Naruto, giving Nymphadora a long deep dot. "I'll see you tomorrow, okay?" said Uchiha. Getting a nod from the female Metamorphomagus, he started moving toward the third floor, leaving Tonk alone. When he reached his destination, he entered the trophy room. The crystal trophy cases glimmered where the moonlight caught them. Cups, shields, plates, and statues winked silver and gold in the darkness. 4 pairs of eyes stared at him as he stepped out. He wasn't expecting 2 others to be there as well, but maybe it was for the best. "How you doing?" casually asked Naruto. "Where's Malfoy?" fired back at Ron, not even acknowledging Uchiha's question. "What? Don't tell me you actually thought that he was coming." But he said that he would come, and you volunteered to be his second," and stuttered out red-headed Gryffindor. "And what if I said that I was sparkling unicorn, traveling through space, and shitting rainbows?" Whatever reason would you have not to believe me, huh? He tricked us. And we fell for it," exclaimed Harry. "Wait, why did you volunteer to be Malfoy's second if you knew he wasn't going to show up?" asked Hermione, while at the same time trying to shake off Neville, who was clinging on to her, shivering like crazy. "To keep you out of trouble, of course. You really thought that I would help out Malfoy? Please, I hate that brat," snarled raven-haired shinobi. Naruto was about to tell them to get back to Gryffindor Tower when they all heard noise in the next room, which made first-year Gryffindor jump. "Sniff around, my sweet, they might be lurking in a corner." They all heard Filch speak to Mrs. Norris. "This way," whispered Naruto, making 4 Gryffindors follow him, petrified, down a long gallery of suits of armor. They could hear Filch getting near. Neville suddenly let out a frightened squeak and broke into a run. He tripped, grabbed Ron around and the pair of them toppled right into a suit of armor. The clanging and crashing were enough to wake the whole castle. "Run!" Harry yelled, and the 5 of them sprinted down the gallery, not looking back to see whether Filch was following. They swung around the doorpost and galloped down one corridor, then another, Harry and the lead, Gryffindor students without any idea where they were or where they were going. And all the while Naruto cursing his luck for being stuck with these stupid brats. They ripped through a tapestry and found themselves in a hidden pageway, hurtled along it and came out near their charms classroom, which they knew was miles from the trophy room. "I think we've lost him," Harry pantsed, leaning against the cold wall and wiping his forehead. Neville was bent double, wheezing and spluttering. "Next time, don't yell and let me take the lead. I know castle better than you 4. Itcha had told them, not looking even a bit winded. "Now, let's go." It wasn't going to be that simple. They hadn't gone more than a dozen paces when a doorknob rattled and something came shooting out of a classroom in front of them. It was Peeves. He caught sight of them and gave a squeal of delight. "Shut up, Peeves, please, you'll get us thrown out," hissed Ron. Peeves cackled. "Wandering around at midnight, ickle firsties. Tut, tut, tut. Naughty, naughty, you'll get caught." "Peeves, leave," commanded Naruto. This only set off Peeves. "Students out of bed." Peeves bellowed, students out of bed down the charms corridor. Uchiha was about to tell his companions to stay calm and follow him, but unfortunately he didn't get the chance to do it as 4 first-years dashed forward to the end of the corridor where they slammed into a door, which was locked. "This is it," Ron said as they pushed helplessly at the door. "We're done for. This is the end." They could hear footsteps, Filch running as fast as he could toward Peeves' shouts. "Oh, move over," Hermione snarled. She grabbed Harry's wand, which Potter took out a while ago, tapped the lock, and whispered, "Alohomora." The lock clicked and the door swung open. They piled through it, shut it quickly, and pressed their ears against it, listening. All the while, Naruto was standing behind them, observing. "Which way did they go, Peeves?" they heard Filch was saying. "Quick, tell me. Say please." "Don't mess with me, Peeves, now where did they go?" "Shan't say nothing if you don't say please," said Peeves in his annoying sing-song voice. "Alright, please." "Nothing. Haha. Told you I wouldn't say anything if you didn't say please. Haha. Hi." And they heard the sound of Peeves whooshing away and Filch cursing in rage. "He thinks this door is locked," Harry whispered. "I think we'll be okay, get off Neville." For Neville had been tugging on the sleeve of Harry's bathrobe for the last minute. "What? Oh, this is just hilarious. I can't wait to see the look on their faces when they realize where exactly they are," thought Naruto, watching as Harry turned around, along with Hermione and Ron, and as they became white as sheets of paper. There, behind all 5 of them, was a monstrous dog, a dog that filled the whole space between ceiling and floor. It had 3 heads. 3 pairs of rolling, mad eyes, 3 noses, twitching and quivering in their direction, 3 drooling saliva hanging in slippery ropes from yellowish fangs. It was standing quite still, all 6 eyes staring at them. "It's probably just surprised to see us, or it would certainly attack us," thought Uchiha, not taking his eyes off the dog. Then 3-headed dogs started growling quite menacingly at them. "Ah, there it is." Naruto prepared to defend himself, but out of the corner of his eye, he saw Potter's hand inching toward the doorknob. "Oh well, I'll come back later. After all, if you're guarding something, it must be really important," were thoughts of Uchiha as he looked straight into the dog's middle head's eyes, and all the while suppressing the urge to smile maniacally. And as if said dog could hear his thoughts, it started growling at him even louder. He started taking small steps backward until his back was pressed into 4 Gryffindors, and seconds later they all fell on their backs, courtesy of Harry opening the door and then slamming it shut. When Naruto got up, he saw Gryffindors running toward their house tower as if demons were chasing them and not even looking back. "Brats forgot about me, huh? That's good. And what do you know, not only did I befriend Potter, but I even found something interesting," thought blue-eyed shinobi, vanishing into the thin air, leaving only darkness of the corridor behind. Equals deleted scene equals. It was around midnight and Filch, along with Mrs. Norris, were patrolling the corridors of Hogwarts as they usually did every night. Filch heard his cat meowing, so he followed the sound. He came upon Mrs. Norris meowing at 570 Slytherin students. Well, what do we have here? Students wandering around after curfew. Detention, all of you. Snarled Filch. Slytherin students looked at each other, took out their wands, and pointed them at Filch. I don't think so. You're just a squib, what can you do? We're just going to obliviate you, and you won't even remember that you saw us. Said one of the Slytherin students. Filch's curled into a nasty grin. Mrs. Norris, roundhouse kicked them. Mew-oh. Boom. Boom. Thud. Thud. B-O-W. Thud. Wham. Bam. Thud thud. And as Filch looked down on 5 unconscious students, he couldn't help but remember the day when he got Mrs. Norris. Equals flashback equals. Filch was sitting on a bench, crying his eyes out. Other kids didn't want to play with him, but what could he do? It wasn't his fault that he was a squib. He didn't notice a man approaching him until a man's shadow fell on his little body. Hey there, buddy, why are you crying? He heard the man say. He looked up but couldn't see the stranger's face because of the sunlight. Nobody wants to play with me and I don't have any friends. Man didn't say anything for a few seconds, only reaching for his backpack with his right hand and bringing his half-closed hand near Filch. When he opened his hand, Filch saw a little bundle of fur that turned out to be a little kitten. Here you go, she will be your friend and she will play with you. Stranger told Filch. Filch took the little cat into his arms and stroked its fur, making the kitten meow in approval. A happy smile appeared on the kid's face as he looked down at his new friend. Thank you. Filch said quietly but loud enough for the man to hear. You're welcome, kid. Replied a stranger and started walking away. Wait, mister, what is your name? Filch called out to the stranger. It's Chuck Norris, kid. Answered the man, giving Filch a thumb up. Filch looked down at the kitten in his arms as it stared back at him. Do you want to be called Mrs. Norris? Asked Kid, receiving another sound of approval from the cat, which made him smile even brighter. Next morning, when Naruto entered the Great Hall, he quickly scanned his surroundings, paying special attention to the 4 Gryffindor that he had a little adventure with last night. He didn't notice anything different about them, except them being a little pale, but he could work with that. Though he did notice that the whole time that he was in the Great Hall, Malfoy could only generate one particular emotion shock. He slowly made his way toward the Gryffindor table, but just as he was about to greet Harry and Ron, owls flooded the Great Hall. Everyone's attention was caught at once by a long thin package carried by 6 large screech owls, and even Naruto had to admit that he was a little interested in it. Though he became even more interested in it after it was dropped in front of the one Harry Potter, followed by a letter. Good morning you two, how are you? Asked Naruto, standing behind Ron and Harry. They both jumped a little and turned around on their chairs to face Naruto. Bloody hell. You almost gave me a heart attack. Don't sneak up on us again. Redeed yelled out in shock while Harry gave a nod of agreement. Sorry guys, didn't mean to scare you. Replied Uchiha, giving them an apologetic smile. If I really wanted to sneak up on you, you both idiots would have been long dead. Blissfully unaware of Naruto's thoughts, Ron spoke up again. What are you even doing here? Aren't you one of those snakes? Pointing with his index toward the Slytherin table. Blue-eyed Shinobi just eyed him for a minute before smirking. I applaud your great skills and observation, Weasley. Yes, I'm one of those snakes as you call it. But sadly, I still do not see your point. Oh, and pointing at people is rude, you might want to work on your manners. Babe started Naruto, not taking his eyes off of the huge creature. Why yes. He is that thing. It's a T-troll. Tonks stuttered out. Troll, huh? He mumbled. You know, buddy, you smell like shit. He continued, smirking at the troll. Almost as if Troll could understand him, he snarled and swung his giant club at Naruto in a horizontal sweep. Tonks yelled for Uchiha to get out of the way, but was ignored by the said shinobi. Finally I get to kill something. But I better do it quick or people will see me. He thought, sparing Nim a quick glance out of the corner of his eye. Guess I'll have to reveal something about myself to her. Oh well, it was bound to happen sooner or later. He looked up at Troll, and a wide toothy grin appeared on his face. Naruto lazily raised his left arm, his palm open and facing an incoming attack. Second later there was soft thunk, and Uchiha could be seen holding a gigantic wooden club with his left hand, while huge Troll was struggling to free his weapon from the grasps of this little human that he decided to attack. So weak. That was the only thing that blue-eyed Slytherin said before there was a loud bang, followed by the sound of Troll's headless body hitting the floor and a nasty sound of his head's S spraying on the wall. All the while Tonks stood behind Naruto, wide-eyed, her hanging open, not quite managing to comprehend the situation that she found herself in. One moment she was yelling for her boyfriend, fearing that he was killed by the huge creature, next said creature was lying on the floor, dead, and walls all around her, covered in its blood, while her supposedly dead boyfriend stood there tall and proud, with his hand outstretched, holding a big, smoking gun. How was the only sound that she managed to make despite so many questions running through her mind. Don't worry about it. Just be cool and play along, I'll explain everything later. He told her, interrupting whatever she was about to ask him. Moments later, Professor McGonagall came rushing toward them, closely followed, with Quirrell bringing up the rear. Quirrell took one look at the troll, let out a faint whimper, and leaned on the wall, clutching his heart. By the look of it, McGonagall was pretty angry, if her red face was any indicator. What were you thinking of, she said, her fury letting itself know. You're lucky you weren't killed. Why aren't you in your dormitory? Snape gave Naruto a swift piercing look. Uchiha could easily guess that his head of the house was not happy with him being here. Please calm down, Professor McGonagall. It was not in our intentions to confront a troll, if that is what you are implying. We did not know that there was a troll wandering freely in the castle. Answered Naruto as calmly as he could. While to professors he looked calm and respectful, he was having a hard time trying not to blow bitch's head for yelling at him. But why are you here? Asked a female professor of the group, albeit a little more calmly than before. We were exercising. Was Naruto's short answer. And what exactly were those exercises? Asked Snape, giving them both a cold look. Tonks Uchiha gestured to the shaken Metamorphomagus. Aims to become an after she graduates. And even though her magical knowledge is enough, her physical side is lacking. So we decided to help each other out. I would help her become physically prepared to become an, and she would help me out with some spells that I was having trouble with at the time. And as you can see, we are still a little winded from the exercises that we did. He finished, pointing toward himself and Nymphadora, while Tonks only nodded in confirmation, not trusting her voice quite yet. And indeed, when professors took a good look at them, they noticed that their clothes were roughed up and they were both sweaty, and Tonks was a little out of breath. Though Snape noticed several red spots on Nymphadora's neck and collarbone, but didn't comment on it. That is acceptable explanation. Said Snape in his silky voice. And what of the troll? What happened to him? Asked Professor McGonagall. I killed it. Was Naruto's simple answer. You did, but how? First years shouldn't know any destructive spells. Asked a shocked professor. Indeed, I did. With a bombarda to the head. As for your last claim, I fear that it does not apply to me. Please elaborate, Mr. Uchiha. Said McGonagall, even more shocked that a first-year student would know such a destructive spell and use it to such a high degree. When I lived in Japan, our house was located in an area with a lot of dangerous creatures. So my father decided to teach me some spells in hopes of keeping me safe. And I'm very thankful for that, for if I did not know how to defend myself, I would be currently dead. Is that a satisfactory answer, Professor McGonagall? Several seconds after his explanation, which professors took to proceed with what was just said, McGonagall gave a curt nod. It is, Mr. Uchiha. You may go. Naruto grabbed Tonks' hand and led her down the corridor, but before they could leave the visual field of three professors, Snape's voice stopped them. Uchiha, barked Snape. Yes, Professor Snape, answered Naruto, turning around, only to find Sever several feet in front of himself. 50 points for defeating a troll, and another 50 for defending your fellow student. Naruto's vision picked up a small twitch of Man's as he gave him points. Thank you, Professor. Oh, and Uchiha. Yes? Asked Naruto curiously. Try not to get caught exercising with Miss Tonks. Snape told him, giving another pointed look. Thank you for your advice, Professor, but I assure you that I will not. Replied Naruto respectfully. Giving him a nod, the head of the Slytherin dismissed them. After several minutes of walking toward the entrance to the Hufflepuff common room, a female Metamorphomagus suddenly grabbed him by his shoulders and ushered him one of the unused classrooms. What the that? Are you out of your mind? We could have died. We could have. Her rant was cut short when Naruto grabbed her face and squeezed it, making her unable to utter another word. Stop yelling at me, Nymphadora. I am not some child you can yell at. I told you that I would explain, and that means that you must shut up and wait for me to explain. He snapped at her. She slowly nodded her head, almost afraid, feeling like a kid being scolded by her parents. He let go of her and sat on some old desk and waved his hand in a come here gesture. She made her way toward the desk that Naruto was sitting on, albeit almost hesitantly, and sat beside him. Are you afraid of me? He asked casually, and Tonks almost detected a hint of amusement in his voice. Her breath hitched and she stared at the raven-haired shinobi, trying to collect her thoughts. No. She proclaimed, putting as much conviction as she could muster in that one word. He looked her over for a moment before he smirked and a second later started chuckling. What's so funny? Her face was red, was it from rememberment or anger, he didn't know. You just looked so cute when you tried to be all serious and shit, I just couldn't help it. Haha. He answered, falling into another fit of laughter. He eventually calmed down enough to hold a normal conversation. You know, it's good that you're not afraid. Any reason for you to say that? Aside from obvious ones, of course. I never really told you this, but I don't like weak and easily scared women, I like them strong and with an attitude. And just so you know, if you were one of those Barbie wannabes, I wouldn't have even spared you a single glance. Really? She asked curiously. Yep. He answered, chuckling for a few seconds. So now that we cleared that issue out, you can ask anything you want, and I promise that I will answer honestly. Why do you have a gun? She blurted out. Oh? You know what a gun is. Guess I shouldn't be surprised, your father is a muggle after all. And the answer to your question is simple, I have him because I love him. That's not what I meant to ask why do you wait, guns as in several of them. You who? How many? She asked hesitantly. Currently I only have 6 pistols, though I do plan on getting more later on. He put his hands behind his head and leaned back to lay on the desk that they were sitting on. Have you ever killed anybody beside that troll? She asked, hovering over him, her hands and on his sides. Yup, sure it did. He answered with a carefree tone. But why? Just a job, nothing personal. A job? You mean to tell me that you kill people for money? She said, almost screaming. Sure do. He answered, giving her a grin. Do you really want money so much that you would kill somebody for it? Well, dying of hunger didn't sound so good to me at the time, and neither did searching for rotten food in trash cans. He answered again with a shrug of his shoulders, causing her eyes to widen. But what about your father and… The lie. He cut her off. The lie? She repeated, completely shocked at what she just heard. Yeah. I own a flat in London that I bought with fake documents and where I live alone. But you know, I've been alone as long as I can remember, so it doesn't really bother me that much. He said a little more quietly, averting his eyes to look on the side, away from Nymphaeora's eyes. And there goes being honest, oh well, who cares? Sure as hell not me. Haha. Were Naruto's thoughts while he tried to keep a semi-sad face. Tonks on the other hand were torn. On one hand, she was really uncomfortable with the whole killing business, but on the other hand, she understood why he did it and she couldn't really blame him. And in the end, her attachment to the raven-haired Slytherin won out. She gently grabbed hold of his head and turned it to look him in the eyes, then leaned down and gave a tender dot. When she pulled away, she slumped down on his and hugged him. You're not alone, you have me. She mumbled, clutching his clothes. I'm glad. He said in a soft voice. Damn, I should get the Oscar for this. Maybe I'll even give the movie a try, preferably one with scene in it. His thoughts were interrupted by the female metamorphomagus clinging to his dot. You know, if several months ago somebody told me that I would have a boyfriend who is 6 years younger than me, and not to mention, a killer. Mercenary. He corrected. A mercenary, I would have laughed at them and asked what they were smoking. She laughed to herself. You forgot, awesome and very good in bed. He said, giving a smirk. Oh? And how do you know very good in bed? Mister? Asked, mimicking his facial expression and poking him playfully in the dot. I don't hear you complaining, miss, oh my god, more he shot back, trying to pronounce her new nickname with some sort of girlish voice. Hearing his teasing, she turned completely red, along with her hair and eyes, though she couldn't help but give a wide smile. You perv. She slapped his shoulder softly, causing him to laugh at her. You know you love it. Can't say that I don't. They lay on the desk, relaxing for several minutes. Naruto is just casually laying, while Nymphadora snuggled to his dot. After several more minutes of silence, Tonks decided to speak up. Say, Naru. Yeah? What is it, babe? Did you come up with that lie on the spot? She asked curiously. Well, kinda. I came up with it while killing a troll. He told her. Wow. Yeah. Then they again descended into silence. Thanks God she forgot about me stopping that damned club with my bare hand, he almost breathed a sigh of relief. Hey Naruto. How did you manage to stop that giant club with your hand? God damn it. He almost groaned. Yep, this was going to be a night. Next morning Great Hall . Students everywhere were discussing events of the previous evening, so it was pretty loud when Naruto entered after finishing one of his intense physical workouts. When he sat at the Slytherin table, in his usual place between Tracy and Daphne, his housemates around him started to whisper and point in his direction. He, of course, knew what it was all about. Somehow, that little piece of information about him killing a troll leaked out. Probably somebody overheard professors talking, or maybe the head boy learned the reason behind the additional 100 points in the Slytherin bar and told everybody. Either way, he did not really care. He looked around one more time and saw that not only people from his house but from all around the Great Hall were talking about him. He released a heavy sigh and started eating his breakfast. Last night he managed to slip past the students that were in the Slytherin common room, not wanting to deal with any useless questions. But it seemed that he didn't really have a choice, so he steeled himself for incoming annoying questions from his housemates. After several minutes of clearing the matter out and actively trying not to kill any annoying brat, he stood up and headed toward the exit. When he was almost out of the Great Hall, he saw Harry, along with Ron, going in the same direction. Perfect timing. "Hey Harry, can you come over here for a second?" He called out to the Gryffindor first year. Boy who lived looked in the direction from which he heard somebody call him, only to see raven-haired Slytherin waving for him to come over. Without a second thought, he started making his way toward his Slytherin friend, Ron following not far behind. "Weasley, did I say that you could come?" he asked rather harshly. Ron was about to reply when Harry cut him off. "It's okay Ron, I'll be back in a minute." Getting a silent nod from his red-haired friend, he moved toward the secluded spot when Naruto was standing. "Yes Naruto, did you want to talk about something?" asked Harry, curious as to why he was pulled over. "As a matter of fact, I do. And the subject of our discussion is standing several feet behind you." "Ron? What about him?" "Harry, you are my friend, so I don't want anything bad to happen to you. And that is exactly why I want you to reconsider your friendship with Ron," he said, while Harry's eyes widened. "What? Why? What's wrong with Ron?" asked the Potter heir. "Many things. Do you know how long Hermione cried yesterday because of him?" But nothing Harry. You have to realize that Ron Weasley is a very jealous, lazy, short-sighted, unintelligent and rude person. And eventually, he will drag you down to his level. Do you remember when Ron told you that all Slytherin were evil and dark? Harry silently nodded, realizing that what Naruto was saying was probably true. "Do I look evil and dark to you Harry? Or as a matter of fact, did any other Slytherin do something evil, dark or mean without any reason whatsoever?" "Well, except Malfoy and his little gang, he's just an dot." Harry shook his head in negative motion for every question and even snickered a little at the end. "Listen, I'm not telling you to stop being friends with Ron right away. Just think about what I said, okay?" Again, Harry only nodded in confirmation and started walking off but was stopped by Naruto's voice. "Oh and Harry, go to the library later on, Hermione will probably be there, she always is. She really needs more friends than just me. And I'm sure that if you ask nicely, she will help you with your studies. But don't bring Weasley with you, okay?" said Naruto and started making his way to his next CL. Though before two first-year Gryffindors disappeared from his sight, he noticed out of the corner of his eye that Harry was keeping a little more distance than usual with a redhead. Naive brats, so easy to manipulate. Hahaha. Thanks for watching this video. If you really enjoy this video, like, subscribe and comment down below and turn on that bell notification. Don't forget to support and follow the Rinoti for writing that awesome fanfic and also make sure to comment on this story link in the description. See you in the next video. Goodbye.